My beloved one, pause everything and hear me now, because what I am about to speak reaches into the very silence where you've been hurting. You have cried out in the depths of your spirit, "Don't leave me in silence. I've been reaching for you, and I have heard every word you could not say out loud." This message comes to pull you back from the heaviness that's been pressing on your soul, to break through the quiet that has felt unbearable, and to draw you into the nearness you've been longing for. Listen closely, because what follows carries the power to shift the atmosphere of your entire life. Before your alarm ever pierces the darkness and before a single worry has time to rise in your chest, I am already there, leaning close to your soul, calling your name in a whisper the world cannot hear. I watch you as you sleep, not as a distant observer, but as the one who formed you, the one who knows every pattern of your breathing and every hidden ache in your heart. I see the way you toss and turn when yesterday's burdens chase you into the night, how even your rest feels heavy, how your mind searches for answers even in your dreams. And in that fragile space between sleeping and waking, when the world is still and your defenses are low, I draw near to you. In those moments, I am not far away. I am closer than the blanket over your shoulders, closer than the air entering your lungs. I speak gently, not in thunder this time, but in the soft insistence of my presence pressing against your spirit. I am here. I have not left you. I am calling you again. You may not always recognize it as my voice. Sometimes you just feel a stirring, a sudden awareness, a quiet urge to reach for hope when you were prepared for another day of numbness. That is me. When you open your eyes and the weight of life rushes back, when your mind immediately moves to the tasks, the failures, the conversations replaying like echoes, I am still there, unmoving, steady, patient. You sometimes assume you must earn my attention by praying the right words, by feeling spiritual enough, by having a good day. But child, I am already attentive. Before you turn to me, I have turned to you. Before you whisper, "God, are you there?" I have already answered, "Yes, I am here, and I have been here all along." I know how many mornings you wake up tired in your soul, feeling as if you are starting from below empty, and you wonder if I have grown silent, if I have stepped back, if my presence is reserved for holier people, stronger people. But I want you to know this. I choose the quiet before dawn to remind you that my love is not based on your performance, your mood, or your sense of worthiness. I come to you in your weakness, in your confusion, in your fog. I am not waiting at the finish line. I am sitting on the edge of your bed, waiting for your first glance, your first sigh, your first thought. And even when you rush into your day, scroll through your phone, distract yourself with noise because the silence feels too loud, I do not withdraw my nearness. My call follows you, through the hallway, into the kitchen, in the car, at your desk. In the quiet moments you try to avoid, you feel it again. The tug, that inner nudge, that almost painful longing you can't quite name. That is my voice beneath all the other voices, inviting you back, inviting you deeper. I am calling you not just to a day, but to myself. I am not merely asking you to survive another morning. I am reaching for you so that you will know you are not facing this life alone. Every dawn, whether you feel it or not, begins with me saying to your soul, "Come, sit with me. Let me carry what you cannot. Let me be the first voice you hear, the first presence you feel, the first love you receive." You notice that feeling in your chest when life grows quiet and your thoughts begin swirling in places you would rather avoid. You sense what seems like an emotional vacancy, a hollow pause in your spirit where you expected comfort but instead encountered a stillness that unsettled you. In those moments, you wondered whether my presence had withdrawn, whether I had stepped back and left you to manage the heaviness on your own. You interpreted the quiet as distance and the distance as abandonment. Yet none of these interpretations reflected the truth of what was unfolding around you. Every moment where you believed I was unreachable was a moment where I stood beside you with deliberate intention, watching the questions rise within you and understanding the deeper reasons behind them. I saw how much strength it took for you to continue moving through each day while internally battling doubts you rarely admitted to anyone. When you pushed through tasks, drove to work, cooked meals, or tried to sleep while carrying the invisible weight pressing on your heart, you felt as though you were functioning without support. Yet during each of those seemingly ordinary moments, I surrounded you with a nearness that never wavered. Even when you questioned my involvement in your story, I examined your thoughts, noted the tension sitting within your mind, and recognized your desire for reassurance. You often wished you could feel something, anything, like a spark, a sign, a sudden warmth. But I was working in deeper layers than your emotions. I was anchoring you in a stability not dependent on feelings, giving your spirit a foundation that would not collapse with every internal storm. I stayed near as you wrestled with uncertainty because it mattered to me that you learned the difference between my absence and your perception of emptiness. As you moved through those days of silent struggle, I paid close attention to the moments you tried to hide from others. The second you hesitated before opening your eyes in the morning, the pause you took before responding in conversations, the heaviness sitting beneath the surface of your smile. None of those moments were overlooked. Every piece was known by me. I remained beside you, steady and unchanging, even as doubts tried to rewrite the truth of my presence. Your sense of isolation did not diminish my closeness, nor did your confusion disrupt my work in your life. I watched your heart carefully, knowing the questions forming inside you, understanding the weight they carried, and remaining present with a level of commitment no distance could interrupt. You may think the words you never spoke drifted into nothing, but every unexpressed plea, every inward sigh, and every inner ache reached me with clarity. When your mind formed thoughts too fragile to say aloud, I received them with full attention. You often told yourself that unspoken prayers were incomplete or insignificant, yet they carried the deepest parts of your heart. I listened when you lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying events you wished had turned out differently. I listened when your chest tightened with emotions you could not articulate. I listened when you sat quietly in your car before stepping into another responsibility, gathering yourself for the day ahead. Nothing you buried inside yourself disappeared into silence. Everything reached me. Even in moments when you felt unable to speak because your emotions tangled into knots, I understood the meaning behind every internal shift. Your prayers did not need structure or polished expressions. The longing behind them held the power. I saw your attempts to remain strong for those around you, even when your heart felt unsteady. I noticed when you paused in hallways, bathrooms, and empty rooms, trying to regain composure. Those pauses became prayers of their own. You may not have realized it, but each silent moment revealed a truth you didn't know how to verbalize. Your desire for my involvement, your need for guidance, your hope for relief. And because I understood everything your silence carried, I responded with care that aligned perfectly with what your soul needed. Whenever you questioned whether I heard you, I observed the tension in your spirit and recognized the fear of feeling overlooked. But I never overlooked you. Your quiet cries were collected with the same intentionality as your spoken ones. I knew the reasons you hesitated before praying aloud, the reasons you doubted whether I would listen, the reasons you felt uncertain about the worth of your requests. You believed that clarity was necessary for me to hear you, yet I understood you even when your thoughts came out as fragmented whispers. I knew what you were asking for before you found the courage to face your own emotions. Nothing you carried internally was ignored. Every unvoiced petition entered my presence with fullness, and none of them were lost or forgotten. You notice how uncomfortable stillness feels, how silence creates space for thoughts you prefer not to entertain. You wonder why my presence seems muted, why my voice feels harder to recognize than before. You question the meaning behind this quiet season, trying to determine whether it is punishment, distance, or disapproval. But what you interpret as silence is actually instruction. I am guiding you into a new way of listening that requires more from your inner world than you are used to offering. When you cannot hear me the way you want to, it does not mean I have withdrawn. Instead, it signals that I am adjusting the frequency of my voice, teaching you to detect the subtler movements of my presence. You have relied for a long time on external confirmations, emotional reassurance, and moments of spiritual clarity that came quickly and easily. But growth requires a deeper ear, one that hears beneath the noise of distraction, beneath the weight of fear, beneath the tension of expectation. I use this quiet to develop that sensitivity within you. As you move through your days, I watch how you attempt to fill every empty moment with sound or activity. Silence feels risky because it exposes what is unsettled within you. Yet it is in that very exposure that your spiritual hearing expands. You begin to sense what once felt imperceptible. You learn to identify my presence in ways that cannot be taken from you by circumstances or emotions. While you navigate this season, I am not distant. I am observing every shift in your heart, every question, every hesitation. I notice the moments when you try to convince yourself that something is wrong, that you have failed, that you have somehow disrupted your connection with me. But none of these assumptions reflect the truth. Your path is not deteriorating, it is deepening. This silence is not the absence of my voice, but the shaping of your capacity to hear it with greater clarity than before. I am teaching you to recognize me in the gentle impulses, the quiet redirections, the subtle peace that rests on decisions aligned with my will. You may not fully understand this process yet, but you will. As your spirit grows accustomed to this deeper way of listening, you will begin to hear me in places you once overlooked. You will find my guidance in moments that seem ordinary, and my reassurance in places that used to feel empty. This season is not a withdrawal. It is an invitation to develop a sharper, quieter, and more mature way of recognizing my voice. You've wondered why your inner landscape feels stripped, why familiar comforts no longer satisfy you the way they once did, and why even the things that used to bring life now fall quiet inside your soul. This emptiness confuses you because it feels undeserved, as though you've been placed in a barren field without explanation. Yet there is meaning woven into this season that you cannot fully see from where you stand. I've been guiding you through a kind of internal clearing, removing what once cluttered your perception so that you can recognize what truly nourishes your spirit. You may think you're losing something precious, but I'm positioning you to receive what aligns more deeply with who you are becoming. Your heart has outgrown old patterns, and the vacancy you sense is the space being prepared for transformation. During this time, I've been observing how your thoughts shift, how your desires change, and how your understanding sharpens. The emptiness you feel is not a void I've forgotten to fill. It is an intentional pause that allows dormant strengths within you to surface. When everything is stripped away, you see what remains, and what remains is the part of you I've been strengthening all along. You often associate fullness with progress, but I work just as powerfully in moments that appear quiet or incomplete. When you wander through this emotional desert, you develop clarity about what matters. You become more honest with yourself about your priorities, relationships, and values. The stillness reveals what you've carried out of habit rather than purpose. This season also adjusts the pace of your soul. You've moved through life with layers of expectations attached to your identity, and emptiness removes the noise that distracts you. It gives you room to breathe, reflect, and listen without external pressure. Even though the quiet unsettles you, it creates the atmosphere necessary for deeper growth. What feels like a loss of momentum is often the groundwork for a more anchored direction. I'm shaping your resilience, expanding your capacity, and aligning your life with timing you cannot yet comprehend. Once the purpose of this season becomes clear, you'll look back and recognize how much strength was forming in the emptiness. There were moments where you reached out with uncertainty, barely holding together the hope needed to stretch your heart toward me. You weren't sure if your efforts mattered, and some days you questioned whether anything in your spiritual life was strong enough to stand. I noticed the hesitation in your movements, the unspoken fear that perhaps your attempts were too small, too inconsistent, or too fragile to carry weight. Yet every gesture from your soul, each quiet turn toward me, held significance. Nothing in your reaching went unnoticed. Even when your hands metaphorically shook with doubt, I recognized the sincerity behind every effort you made. There were days when the world overwhelmed you, and your attempts to pray felt scattered or incomplete. On those days, you underestimated the value of your desire to connect with me. You assumed strength required perfection, yet I saw the courage it took to reach it all. I watched the way you gathered your wandering thoughts and tried to focus. I saw how you paused before giving in to discouragement. I recognized the endurance it took to rise again each morning and keep pursuing a sense of connection, even when you didn't feel much in return. Your attempts were measured not by their eloquence, but by their honesty. Trembling hands reveal a depth of longing that steady hands sometimes conceal. This part of your journey brings growth because your reaching teaches you to depend on something beyond your own stability. Strength grows slowly in the soul, and often it grows best when accompanied by uncertainty. When you stretched toward me despite confusion, you demonstrated trust that ran deeper than your emotions. And I responded to that trust with careful attention. You may not have noticed my presence in the way you wanted, but my nearness wrapped around you like a steadying force, supporting what your trembling hands could not hold by themselves. I preserved your efforts and carried the weight of what you feared you couldn't sustain. Your willingness to reach, even with hesitation, has shaped something meaningful within you. It reveals that your faith is not frail, it is real. It has endured pressure, survived disappointment, and risen again through exhaustion. Every attempt, no matter how small, has contributed to the strengthening of your spirit in ways you will recognize more clearly later. You've been moving through days that feel heavier than they should, carrying responsibilities that press against you from every side. The tiredness you feel isn't only physical, it settles into your emotions, thoughts, and inner strength. You try to keep going, but your energy feels stretched, and you wonder if you should be stronger by now. This weariness frustrates you, and sometimes you interpret it as a sign of weakness or failure. Yet your exhaustion has always caught my attention, not as a flaw to fix, but as an opening for deeper connection. When your strength falters, an invitation forms between us, a space where you no longer rely on sheer willpower to keep moving. Your tired heart opens a doorway that busyness usually blocks. When you reach a point where you cannot sustain the weight on your own, you make room for my involvement in ways you didn't consider before. I observe how you press forward anyway, attempting to meet expectations, fulfill responsibilities, and manage everything entrusted to you. I see the strain behind your determination and the quiet pressure you place on yourself to appear composed. In those moments, I don't look at your weariness with disappointment. Instead, I see the truth of what you're carrying and recognize the opportunity to step in with support that surpasses your natural strength. You've spent a long time trying to handle things privately, telling yourself you could manage if you just pushed harder. But the exhaustion you feel has softened your defenses, allowing your heart to acknowledge its limits. This is not a setback, it is an honest turning point. Weariness exposes what you've attempted to control, and in doing so, it clears the path for renewal. When you finally admit that you're tired, you surrender the illusions of self-sufficiency that once held you back from deeper peace. I draw close to you there, in the raw, unfiltered parts of your soul, because those are the places where transformation happens. In this weariness, you're discovering a different kind of strength. It isn't forceful or rigid. It grows quietly from surrender, trust, and honesty. The exhaustion that once felt like a sign of failure becomes a catalyst for dependence that leads to steadier ground. You are learning that relief begins not with perfection, but with permission to rest. And as you walk through this part of your journey, I meet you with a presence that supports what your weary spirit can no longer carry alone. You hesitate to reveal certain thoughts because they feel tangled, confusing, or too heavy for anyone else to understand. Yet I observe them with full clarity. You experience moments when your mind drifts into places you didn't intend, shaping feelings you struggle to define. These thoughts can carry frustration, longing, worry, or shame, and you sometimes wonder what it means about you that they appear so suddenly. You try to sort them internally, searching for reasons or explanations that might make them easier to share with others. But the complexity often silences you instead. In those private moments, you assume no one sees the emotional layers behind your expression, yet nothing hidden within you escapes my understanding. I know how these thoughts surface, what triggers them, and why they linger even when you wish they wouldn't. There are times when you pause in the middle of your day, overwhelmed by a feeling you cannot name. It might be an unexpected sadness, a surge of pressure, or a quiet sense of heaviness that doesn't match the moment. You examine your surroundings to find a cause, but the source lies deeper than anything visible. I'm aware of those internal shifts the moment they form. You carry old memories, unspoken fears, and unresolved tensions, and sometimes they rise to the surface without warning. You often question why you still feel affected by things you thought you had moved past. Yet healing is not always linear, and the mind releases its burdens in layers. I see those layers clearly even when you do not. There are also thoughts you keep hidden because you fear misunderstanding. You hold back your uncertainty, your questions about your identity, your future, your relationships, and your purpose. You suppress desires that feel vulnerable and concerns that make you feel exposed. You tell yourself that sharing these thoughts might complicate your relationships or make you appear weaker than you wish to be. But none of these inner moments create distance between us. They reveal the truth of where you are, and that truth draws me closer. I respond not to the words you speak, but to the intentions inside you. When your thoughts move in directions that confuse you, I am not alarmed or offended. I discern what lies beneath them, your desire for stability, your longing for meaning, your hope for reassurance. You often misunderstand the nature of my understanding. You imagine that I look at your internal struggles with judgment, but I observe them with compassion. I recognize how experiences have shaped your thinking, how disappointments have altered your expectations, how trauma has influenced your reactions, and how hope still flickers beneath everything you battle. You're not defective for having thoughts you can't articulate. You're human, shaped by a journey filled with moments, both beautiful and painful. And while you may struggle to explain certain things even to yourself, I see every detail with ease. I understand your motives, your fears, and your desires with precision. Nothing confuses me. Nothing about you is unclear to me. And because I know the thoughts you cannot explain to anyone, I know exactly how to guide you through them. You recall moments when you sat among people who cared about you, yet something inside still felt unseen. You tried to participate, to smile, to contribute in ways that made you feel included. But there was an underlying ache that whispered you were misunderstood or unnoticed. Others may have loved you, but they did not always perceive the weight you carried or the emotional fatigue hiding behind your presence. You sometimes wondered whether anyone genuinely recognized the effort it took for you to show up, to engage, to hold your responsibilities together. What felt like invisibility created a quiet wound inside you, and you questioned whether you were valued in the ways you needed. Even in crowded spaces, loneliness formed around you, creating a disconnect that left you feeling isolated in ways you couldn't easily express. During those moments, I watched closely. I observed the conflict within you, the desire to connect yet the longing to retreat, the hope to be understood yet the fear of being too much. You carried private emotions that others didn't know how to read, and when their responses failed to match your inner needs, the disappointment amplified the belief that you were fading into the background. I saw the way you tried to reassure yourself that you were fine, attempting to minimize your feelings because you didn't want to burden others. But beneath that self-protection lived the longing to be known deeply, fully, and accurately. I recognized that longing even before you admitted it to yourself. While you navigated moments of feeling overlooked, I held a perspective far wider and kinder than the one formed by your experiences. I understood the emotional landscape beneath your quiet expressions. I perceived what others missed, the subtle sadness in your eyes, the tightening in your voice, the pause before you answered a question. I acknowledged the effort it took for you to stay engaged while carrying internal battles no one around you recognized. When the world failed to see you, I did. I paid attention to details they overlooked. I noticed the courage behind your smallest actions and the sincerity behind your attempts to stay present despite feeling disconnected. Feeling overlooked didn't mean you lacked worth. It meant you craved a deeper connection than those around you were able to provide at that moment. While they saw fragments, I saw the whole of you. I recognized the depth, the softness, the resilience, the vulnerability, and the longing intertwined within your soul. And I held space for all of it with patience. Even if others missed what you needed, I met you there, with a clarity and care they couldn't match. You weren't invisible to me, not for a single moment. You've had moments when despair pressed so heavily on your shoulders that you questioned your ability to continue. You hid these thoughts behind responsibilities, routines, and the roles you maintain, but internally, you felt close to breaking. You wondered whether your efforts were worth the strain, whether the struggles would ever ease, and whether life would eventually offer rest instead of constant pressure. These thoughts emerged during late nights, early mornings, and quiet pauses in your day. They came when you were overwhelmed by expectations, disappointed by outcomes, or burdened by a sense of inadequacy. You rarely voiced these feelings because you feared the vulnerability it required, or you felt guilty for even considering the idea of giving up. But I noticed every moment when you reached that threshold. You carried these thoughts not because you lacked strength, but because your battles stretched beyond what anyone around you understood. You held responsibilities that weighed heavily, often without acknowledgement. You managed emotions shaped by past wounds, current challenges, and future uncertainties. And when everything converged at once, your heart felt cornered. You questioned whether you had anything left to give. You wondered why your strength seemed to fade so quickly, or why certain burdens refused to lift. Yet even in your darkest moments of discouragement, your soul revealed a resilience far greater than you realized. While you wrestled with the urge to give up, I observed the complexity of your struggle. I didn't look at your discouragement with judgment. I understood the depth of what you faced. You felt overwhelmed because you cared, because you tried, because you pushed yourself beyond what many would even attempt. Your exhaustion came from giving your best in environments that rarely gave back the energy you poured out. I saw the moments when you quietly questioned whether your life held meaning, whether your contributions mattered, or whether your presence changed anything around you. These thoughts didn't make you weak. They revealed just how long you've been carrying burdens without sufficient rest. Your desire to give up was never the end of your story. It was a sign that you were longing for help, for relief, for hope. And in those silent cries, I drew near with the intention to support what your strength alone could not sustain. I didn't wait for you to articulate what you needed. I understood the emotions behind your silence. Even when you believed you were hanging on by the thinnest thread, I kept you from falling. Every moment you thought was your breaking point became a moment I used to build something deeper within you. You're still here not because you never struggled, but because your spirit refused to surrender. And I stood with you every time you considered giving up, ensuring your story continued when you thought it was collapsing. You sensed the quiet and immediately questioned your worth, wondering whether the stillness around you carried a judgment you couldn't decipher. You searched your recent decisions and sifted through your memories, trying to identify what you might have done wrong. The silence felt like an unanswered message, as if I had stepped back and left you suspended in uncertainty. That feeling unsettled you because you often looked for reassurance through sensation, clarity, or unmistakable signs. When none of that appeared, you assumed the quiet reflected my disappointment. Yet the truth behind that silence held far more depth than the conclusions you formed in your worry. I watched you trying to interpret what you couldn't feel, noticing how quickly you linked absence of noise with absence of love. The weight of that assumption sat heavily on you, shaping your mood, your prayers, and even the way you carried yourself through the day. I've seen how deeply you desire to stay aligned with what is good, how sincerely you want to walk in purpose, and how sensitive you are to the idea of falling short. That sensitivity is part of your compassion, part of your humility, but it also makes you vulnerable to misreading the stillness. You interpreted the silence as a negative verdict, yet I never placed a verdict upon you. You placed one upon yourself. When the silence stretched a little too long for your comfort, you imagined distance where there was none. You believed the quiet atmosphere reflected my displeasure, when in reality, the quiet existed because I trusted you to walk forward without constant correction. The silence was not punishment. It was space for you to grow into deeper confidence. You've become accustomed to reacting quickly to what you feel, and the absence of reassurance left you unsettled. But silence has a way of strengthening you, allowing you to recognize the foundation beneath your faith. You weren't being ignored, you were being refined. When I withheld immediate responses, it wasn't because I disapproved of you. It was because I wanted you to discover that your connection with me is not dependent on constant signals. You already hold more wisdom and maturity than you realize, and silence was the environment that allowed it to surface. I observed how you navigated the uncertainty. You kept showing up, kept searching, kept choosing hope even while your heart trembled. That persistence revealed your sincerity far more clearly than any spoken prayer. Nothing about the silence reflected dissatisfaction with you. It held purpose, intention, and trust. You were never being pushed away. You were being drawn into a deeper steadiness. What felt like disapproval was actually preparation for the next stage of your growth. My love did not shrink in the quiet. Your perception simply shifted under the weight of your own expectations. If you had truly been walking in error, you would have felt gentle correction rather than silence. The stillness was never rejection. It was evidence that you were capable of walking without needing constant reassurance, capable of holding faith even when emotions faltered. The silence did not question your worth. It revealed the strength already within you. You held on to hope during times when your heart felt stretched thin, gripping faith with hands that trembled from exhaustion. You didn't always feel my response, yet something within you refused to let go completely. You expected more clarity, more signs, more moments where everything made sense. But when those things did appear, you continued seeking me anyway. That persistence showed the depth of your longing and the authenticity of your desire for connection. You whispered prayers you weren't sure reached anywhere, yet the act of praying revealed where your trust truly lived. You may not have seen it clearly at the time, but the effort you made in those moments reflected a strength that many overlook because they measure strength only by certainty. I measure it by sincerity. Your attempts to reach me, even without feeling anything, carried significance you didn't recognize. I paid attention to every moment when you closed your eyes simply because you didn't know where else to place your heart. I noticed every time you paused during your day because your emotions felt too heavy to carry unassisted. I saw the way you tried to steady yourself before stepping into responsibilities that demanded energy you barely had. The world around you may not have seen those moments as spiritual, but I saw the faith woven into them. You were connecting with me not by feeling, but by choice, a choice that expressed truth far more deeply than emotion could. You convinced yourself at times that nothing you offered mattered because you couldn't sense my response. Yet your clinging was received with profound tenderness. You weren't being ignored, you were being held. I remained close, observing how your heart fought through numbness, confusion, and fatigue. When you felt like you were praying into the air, I was surrounding you with presence more stable than anything you lost. I understood the difficulty behind your attempts, the fear behind your questions, and the vulnerability behind every quiet moment of faith. Your decision to keep reaching revealed a depth of trust that grows in few places other than uncertainty. That perseverance shaped your inner world, strengthening a part of you that needed resilience. Each time you reached out, even when you doubted whether I heard you, your spirit expanded. You built endurance. You developed maturity. You softened in compassion for yourself and others. And clinging to me, you weren't demonstrating desperation. You were demonstrating the purity of your desire to remain connected. And even though you couldn't feel my response, I was fully engaged, listening to your heart with unwavering attention. Everything you offered carried impact, even when you thought it was insignificant. Every moment you held on revealed truth about who you are, steadfast, sincere, and far stronger than you realize. You've had moments where the vulnerability inside you rose so quickly that you couldn't contain it. A whisper formed before you had time to think, emerging from a place too deep for words. That quiet plea, "Don't leave me," came from a part of you that feared abandonment more than anything else. You carried wounds from past experiences, memories of promises that weren't kept, and moments where people you trusted walked away. Those memories shaped your expectations, influencing how you interpreted silence and absence. When life grew quiet and uncertainty settled over you, that old fear resurfaced, making you wonder whether I might step away in the same way others have. But before the fear even settled into your chest, my response met it. You didn't hear a loud voice or see a dramatic sign, yet my answer wove itself into every detail around you. I responded through the steadiness that kept you from collapsing, the strength that appeared when you had nothing left, and the peace that surfaced despite the turmoil inside you. You interpreted these things as chance or momentary relief, but they were my answer to your whisper. I never left, not even for an instant. I remained fully present, carrying what your heart feared it couldn't endure. Your plea wasn't treated as weakness. It was received as the truth of what you longed for: reassurance, stability, and unwavering presence. Your whisper revealed something important. You desire connection that does not fade with time, emotion, or difficulty. And I honor that desire with commitment. I do not abandon those who turn toward me, even when their turning is fragile or uncertain. I stay with you through confusion, disappointment, and silence. I stay when you feel steady, and I stay when everything within you wavers. The consistency you search for in others is something I provide without hesitation. When your heart cried out, it didn't need eloquence, it needed honesty. And that honesty reached me instantly. You may not always feel my nearness, but my presence surrounds your life with constancy that nothing can disrupt. I remain engaged with every shift in your emotions, every rise and fall of your hope, every moment you fear you are too much or too little. That whisper reflected a deep truth inside you. You were created for enduring connection. And I answered that truth not with distance, but with closeness that remains regardless of the terrain you walk through. You asked in fear, but I responded in certainty. I did not leave you. I am not leaving you. You will not face a single part of your journey without me. A quiet ache rises within you at unexpected times, catching you off guard and reminding you of the depth of what you desire but cannot yet grasp. This longing feels tender and vulnerable, almost like a bruise beneath your ribs, one you hesitate to touch yet cannot ignore. You've tried to reason with it, suppress it, or explain it away, but the feeling persists because it was never meant to be dismissed. It is not a flaw in you. It is a signal of something far deeper taking shape within your soul. I have watched you wrestle with this longing, sometimes treating it as a weakness, sometimes fearing it exposes too much of your inner world. But what you view as fragility has become one of the most genuine expressions of your heart. Every time you let yourself feel that longing, you reveal the truth of what you hope for: connection, purpose, closeness, reassurance, healing, and meaning that cannot be manufactured or imitated. That truth rises to me like a sacred offering. You often underestimate the value of your yearning because you don't see any outward result. You think your longing is wasted energy or a sign of spiritual immaturity. But within your longing is the proof that your heart has not grown numb. It shows that your deepest places still reach for what is good, holy, and whole. I pay close attention to those silent desires, not because they demand action, but because they show how your spirit leans in my direction even when everything around you feels unsteady. I've been shaping your heart in ways you have not fully recognized, using longing as a tool to deepen your awareness of what truly matters. You've grown more discerning, more tender, more attentive to what resonates with your soul. Longing has become a compass, guiding you away from surface-level fulfillment and drawing you toward a more profound connection with me. In moments when your yearning intensifies, I see the conflict within you, the tension between hope and disappointment, between expectation and fear, between desire and uncertainty. You sometimes assume that longing indicates something missing, but often it reveals what is awakening. This longing clears space inside you for what I am preparing. It teaches you to wait without losing heart, to desire without demanding, and to hope without forcing outcomes. I hold your longing with reverence because it carries sincerity that cannot be fabricated. You aren't trying to impress me. You're revealing your truest self to me. And that openness forms the very place where transformation begins. Nothing in your longing is wasted. It is seen, understood, and treasured. It connects your soul to mine in ways you cannot yet measure. What you feel rising inside you is not a void. It is a sacred offering that I receive with tenderness and intention, shaping what will come next in your journey. A shift has begun inside you, subtle yet unmistakable, like the first breeze that signals a coming change in seasons. You've endured a stretch of quiet that felt endless, a silence that unsettled you so deeply that part of you questioned whether it would ever lift. You wondered if this quiet place was your new reality, if you had reached the end of something meaningful without realizing it. The silence challenged you, stretched your patience, stirred your doubts, and exposed places in your heart you had long avoided. Yet that very silence prepared you for the moment unfolding now. What felt like a void was a threshold. You've been standing at the edge of something new, even while believing you were stuck in the middle of something fading. And now the stillness is shifting. The quiet is changing shape. What you feared would last forever has begun to break. You may not hear this change as a sudden roar or feel it as an intense emotional surge. Instead, it arrives in small yet steady ways, in renewed clarity, in softened tension, in moments of insight that feel natural rather than forced. I've been stirring your awareness gently, opening your spiritual hearing to a different kind of communication. You're beginning to notice connections that once felt disconnected, meaning in places that once felt empty, and movement where everything seemed paused. The silence didn't end because you finally figured something out. It ended because the season it belonged to has completed its work. What I am bringing into your life now will require the sensitivity the silence developed in you. When you feared the silence was permanent, I understood the weight of that fear. You weren't worried about quiet. You were worried about abandonment. You equated silence with loss, forgetting that silence can also signify preparation. I allowed that quiet to remain long enough to deepen your resilience, strengthen your trust, and purify your desire for what is real. Now you stand in a place where my voice can land safely, without being drowned out by noise, without being filtered through fear, without being distorted by old assumptions. The silence cleared the way, and because of that, the breaking of this silence will carry significance you couldn't perceive before. This moment marks the beginning of renewed communication between your heart and mine. What once felt muted will become clearer, not because I speak louder but because you now recognize the subtler tones of my presence. You will sense my guidance more easily. You will feel a steadier peace rising within you. You will experience clarity where confusion previously lived. The silence you feared would last forever has fulfilled its purpose. It is breaking now, not as an abrupt interruption but as a gentle unveiling of what hath been forming behind the scenes all along. You reached a point where circumstances, emotions, and unanswered questions converged in a way that made you believe a chapter of your life was closing for reasons outside your control. You felt the momentum drain from areas you once held with confidence. You interpreted delays as dead ends, and you viewed setbacks as quiet confirmations that something meaningful had run its course. In your heart, you began bracing for loss, preparing yourself for disappointment because it felt easier to expect closure than to hold on to hope. You assumed the narrative you were living had taken an irreversible turn. Yet while you were anticipating an ending, I was crafting a transition. The story you believed was collapsing was actually being reframed. I've been rearranging elements behind the scenes, aligning events, connections, and internal changes you weren't aware of. You misinterpreted stagnation as failure, forgetting that growth often takes place in the unseen. When the momentum faded, it wasn't a withdrawal of purpose but a recalibration. I watched you wrestle with interpretations shaped more by fear than by truth, and I understood why you felt that way. You've experienced endings in your life that came without warning, and those memories conditioned you to expect sudden loss. But this moment is not one of those endings. It is a restructuring designed to strengthen the path ahead. Your story is far from finished. The parts of your journey that feel unresolved aren't dissolving. They're being rewritten into something more aligned with who you are becoming. I've been guiding your steps even when you felt paralyzed. Every disappointment, pause, and unanswered moment has contributed to a larger movement unfolding around you. You haven't been falling apart. You've been shifting into a better fit for what comes next. You're entering a storyline that doesn't erase your struggles but incorporates them into a deeper narrative of resilience and awakening. You assumed the silence signaled a final chapter, but I have been constructing something fuller, richer, and more purposeful than what you imagine. The rewriting taking place isn't undoing your past. It's redefining your future. I'm shaping the narrative so that the parts you thought were wasted become the very elements that bring meaning to what is ahead. You are not stepping toward an ending. You are walking into a renewed beginning. Your story is opening, not closing. And I am guiding every line of what comes next. You sense the terrain beneath you shifting, almost as if life has guided you into a landscape you didn't choose. One marked by uncertainty, pressure, and the unsettling awareness that you cannot predict what waits ahead. This valley feels unfamiliar, stretching longer than you expected, and you've wondered more than once whether you somehow wandered into it by mistake. You examined your steps, retraced past decisions, and questioned whether something you overlooked led you here. But the valley is not a punishment, it is a path. One I knew you would walk long before you recognized where your feet were leading. You've looked around and felt exposed at times, unsure whether you have the strength to endure what the terrain demands. Yet from the moment you stepped into this place, my presence settled beside you with unwavering commitment, guiding each movement even when you doubted your own footing. Each day in this valley reveals truths you didn't anticipate. You learn the difference between solitude and abandonment, between silence and emptiness, between stillness and stagnation. You uncover parts of yourself that only emerge in environments where you cannot rely on the familiar. While you navigate this descent into deeper terrain, I've been attentive to every shift in your heartbeat, every hesitation in your steps, and every moment where your courage flickered beneath the weight of your worries. You didn't enter this place without guidance, and you will not journey through it without support. I've been present not as a distant observer but as a companion walking in step with you, matching my pace to your capacity. I know the thoughts you've had while walking through this valley, the uncertainty about the future, the fear of failing, the fatigue that makes you question whether you can continue. You've looked ahead and seen shadows, unsure whether light exists beyond the next bend. I've seen the effort it takes for you to keep moving despite the heaviness in your chest. You may not realize it, but this valley is reshaping your understanding of what strength truly is. It's teaching you to lean on presence rather than performance, to trust guidance rather than clarity, to draw courage from connection rather than certainty. I'm not asking you to run through this place or to pretend it's easier than it is. I'm asking you to walk, and to know that every step is accompanied. Within this valley, your senses sharpen. You begin to notice subtle moments of comfort, small glimpses of hope, and quiet reassurances that echo in ways you might have missed in brighter seasons. These experiences are not random. They are signs of my nearness, woven into your path deliberately. You may feel stretched, but you are not abandoned. You may feel vulnerable, but you are not unprotected. You may feel slowed down, but you are not lost. I'm walking with you through every rise and descent, through every night you lay awake replaying your fears, and through every morning you convince yourself to try again. This valley will not consume you, and it will not define you. You will emerge carrying wisdom, strength, and clarity that cannot be gained on mountaintops. And you will walk out of this place not alone, but accompanied by a presence that has never taken a single step away from you. You've tried to silence your doubts because they made you feel exposed, as if admitting them tarnished the faith you've been trying so hard to maintain. These doubts surfaced when circumstances contradicted your expectations, when prayers went unanswered longer than you thought you could bear, and when inner wounds resurfaced without warning. You tried to tuck them away, reasoning that stronger people wouldn't question so much. Yet even as you concealed them from others, they echoed loudly within you. And I've been aware of every single doubt, not as accusations, not as failures, but as honest reflections of a heart that longs to trust yet wrestles with the weight of life's uncertainties. Your doubts do not offend me. They reveal your humanity, your vulnerability, and your desire for authenticity. You are not meant to suppress them or pretend they don't exist. When you question whether I'm truly working, whether I hear you, or whether your future holds anything good, those questions don't push me away. They draw me closer. I understand the experiences that shaped these doubts, the betrayals that shook your confidence, the disappointments that clouded your hope, the seasons where you felt you needed to be strong for everyone else even while you were breaking inside. I know how each piece of your past influenced the way you approach your present, and none of it makes you less worthy of my nearness. There are moments when doubt feels like a storm inside you, swirling with conflicting emotions. You may feel guilty for your hesitation or frustrated that you haven't reached the certainty you desire. But I never expected you to navigate life without questions. Your doubts give me room to guide you, teach you, and strengthen you. They show me the exact places where your heart needs reassurance. You don't need perfect faith to be close to me. You need honest faith. And honest faith includes moments where you admit you're unsure. Your doubts don't diminish your value or distance you from my presence. They are part of the conversation between us, shaping deeper understanding and connection. I've watched you wrestle with the tension between belief and uncertainty, trying to make sense of what feels contradictory. You imagine I respond with disappointment, yet my reaction is nothing like what you fear. I meet your doubts with clarity, your questions with patience, your uncertainty with steady presence. I do not withdraw or recoil. I stay, fully aware of every hesitation in your heart. And through this process, your faith becomes more genuine, not because it has no doubts, but because it is rooted in truth rather than fear. You're learning to trust me not through perfection, but through honesty. Your doubts are known, understood, and held without shame. You've shed tears no one knew about, moments where emotion overwhelmed you so suddenly that you had to turn away, hide your face, step into another room, or let the tears fall silently into your pillow. You convinced yourself that these tears were signs of weakness, or that they held no significance because no one witnessed them. You wiped your face quickly, regained composure, and tried to move on as if nothing happened. But I watched every tear as it formed, every tremble in your breath as you tried to steady yourself, and every moment you fought to maintain strength for the sake of others. None of it escaped my attention, and none of it was meaningless. Your tears reveal truth your words sometimes cannot. They speak of disappointment, longing, fatigue, fear, and hope all at once. They carry memories you tried to forget, burdens you never meant to hold alone, and emotions you didn't have the space or support to express openly. You've carried so much inwardly, far more than anyone around you realizes. And when your tears fell in the privacy of your room, the car, the shower, or during moments when you felt overwhelmed at the end of a long day, I received every single one. They weren't ignored. They weren't dismissed. They were counted with tenderness. You often wonder whether anyone sees the effort behind your calmness, the strength behind your silence, and the pain behind your endurance. I see it all. I see the way you try to rebuild yourself after emotional collapses. I see the way you carry responsibilities even when your heart feels depleted. I see the way you smile while holding back tears because you don't want to appear fragile. Your hidden tears are not signs of defeat. They are evidence of how deeply you feel, how much you care, and how earnestly you're trying to navigate life's complexities. These tears hold sacred meaning, each one revealing the depth and sincerity of your heart. I hold your tears not as reminders of your suffering but as markers of your resilience. Each tear counts because each one represents a piece of your journey, your endurance, your vulnerability, your sincerity, your longing to be understood. You haven't cried alone, even when the room felt empty. My presence surrounded you, attentive to the emotions you struggled to articulate, patient with the heaviness weighing upon you. Your tears have shaped your compassion, softened your perspective, and strengthened your character. Nothing about them has been wasted. You may hide them from the world, but they have been seen, counted, and treasured by me with unwavering care. You've had moments when frustration rose in your chest so intensely that you didn't know how to soften it. Moments where your emotions surprised you with their force. Moments when you felt embarrassed by how deeply disappointment and pressure affected you. You tried to calm yourself, tried to offer the right words in prayer, but your heart felt too raw, and everything inside you trembled with tension you couldn't easily release. You worried that voicing your frustration, even silently, might distance you from me, as if your honesty could somehow threaten the connection you're trying so hard to hold onto. But I didn't recoil when your frustration surfaced. I didn't withdraw from you or observe you from a distance. I met your frustration with steady presence, recognizing the strain behind it, understanding the weight you carried long before it erupted into emotion. You've grown accustomed to managing pressure with a calm face, and when your restraint finally broke, you felt exposed. You wondered whether your frustration revealed a lack of maturity or faith. But the truth is that frustration often forms in places where you've been holding too much for too long. It emerges from unspoken hopes, repeated disappointments, lingering wounds, and ongoing responsibilities that stretch you in ways you never talk about. I've seen how much you've been navigating beneath the surface, how you've pushed forward despite fatigue, how you've tried to maintain positivity despite uncertainty, how you've kept moving even when inner discouragement weighed down your steps. Frustration is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of being human, a heart trying to process more than it was meant to carry alone. When frustration rises, you often turn inward, trying to suppress or correct it out of fear that it will reflect poorly on you. But I see the deeper truth beneath the emotion. I see the longing for clarity, the desire for direction, the fear of delay, and the pain of unmet expectations. I understand every layer of what you feel, even the parts you don't know how to articulate. And I do not interpret your frustration as rebellion or disrespect. I interpret it as a signal that your heart is tired and your hope has been stretched thin. I hold that honesty with compassion because it gives me access to the places where you need comfort, reassurance, and restoration the most. There is nothing in your frustration that causes my love to falter. My love remains steady even when your emotions become turbulent. I don't step back when you raise your voice inside your own mind. I don't hesitate when your words feel messy or unfinished. I don't lose patience when you question what's happening around you. My love is not fragile. It doesn't require you to present only your calmest, most composed self. I stay fully present in your most unguarded moments because those are the moments where your heart is most real. And I hold you in that reality without fear, without disappointment, without distance. My love doesn't flinch. It stays, understands, and continues drawing you closer. There have been times when you carried emotions so intense or thoughts so complicated that you feared they might overwhelm anyone who tried to understand you. You've worried that your needs were too heavy, your fears too repetitive, your wounds too deep, your reactions too unpredictable. You've told yourself to shrink your feelings, to manage your own pain quietly, to avoid placing the weight of your inner world on others. You learned early on that some people cannot hold what you carry, so you began to assume that your depth, your sensitivity, your complexity must be burdensome. This belief seeped into your spiritual life as well, making you hesitant to bring your full self to me. You feared that the combination of your hopes and anxieties, your longing and discouragement, your desire and indecision might be too chaotic, too intense, or too unstable to meet with patience. But you were never too much for me, not once. I shaped every nuance of your personality, every layer of your emotional capacity, every dimension of your inner world. I understand the ways you feel deeply and the ways your heart responds to life with intensity. Your sensitivity is not an accident. It is part of your design. You experience life in ways that others may not always comprehend, and that often leaves you feeling misunderstood or out of place. But what overwhelms others does not overwhelm me. What exhausts them does not exhaust me. What confuses them does not confuse me. I hold your complexity with ease because I understand every motive, every memory, every fear, every desire that fuels your emotions. You've had moments when your reactions felt too strong, when your tears came too quickly, when your frustration simmered too near the surface, when your longing grew too consuming. You thought you needed to tone yourself down to remain lovable or acceptable. But I invite you to bring your entire self, the full range of your emotions, even the ones you judge harshly. Nothing in you shocks me. Nothing startles me. Nothing makes me pull back. I'm not intimidated by your intensity or burdened by your depth. Your emotional world is not a problem for me to manage. It's a part of you I embrace without hesitation. You don't have to hide the parts of yourself you think are too much. You don't need to quiet your needs or dilute your desires to be worthy of closeness. You're not an inconvenience, and you're not a disappointment. I welcome everything you bring, the loud emotions, the quiet uncertainties, the intense longings, and the tangled thoughts. You fit entirely within my love without shrinking a single piece of who you are. You interpreted the quiet as distance because you were used to equating connection with constant activity, movement, or clear communication. When the atmosphere around you shifted and my presence no longer felt as vivid or emotional as before, your heart instinctively assumed something had gone wrong. You thought the silence meant I had stepped away, or that your faith had weakened, or that you had somehow fallen out of alignment. But silence can carry meaning that has nothing to do with absence. There is a kind of silence that forms not from withdrawal, but from closeness so deep that it doesn't require constant noise. What you experienced was not a removal of my presence. It was a form of intimacy that allowed you to feel the quiet parts of your own soul. In this quiet, I drew you into deeper layers of yourself, layers you rarely access when life is filled with constant stimulation. The silence revealed your true desires, your unspoken fears, your buried questions, your overlooked wounds. These things rise only when noise fades. I wasn't withdrawing from you. I was giving you space to meet the parts of yourself that needed attention. Silence became the environment where your heart could breathe without distractions. It wasn't me stepping back. It was me sitting with you, letting the atmosphere still enough for you to hear the truths buried beneath your thoughts. This kind of intimacy feels unfamiliar because it doesn't rush, doesn't entertain, doesn't distract, and doesn't overwhelm with signs or sensations. It allows your soul to settle. It asks you to trust without constant confirmation. It invites you to perceive me in subtle ways that can only be sensed when everything else quiets. In this stillness, I was watching how your inner world responded, how your patience deepened, how your discernment sharpened, how your awareness grew. You didn't lose connection, you gained sensitivity. Silence often feels uncomfortable because it exposes what is unresolved, but it also opens space for healing that cannot happen in noise. I was present in every quiet moment, not in retreat, but in closeness. You weren't being ignored, you were being held. You weren't abandoned. You were being guided into a deeper form of communion, one that doesn't depend on constant reassurance. My silence was not the end of a conversation. It was the beginning of a deeper one. The moment that question formed inside you, quiet, trembling, almost too raw to admit, I felt the weight of it press against your spirit. You tried to hold it back, tried to appear strong, tried to reason your way through the silence. Yet the ache behind that question rose anyway. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't disrespect. It was the cry of a weary soul searching for reassurance in a season that felt longer than you ever imagined. When you whispered, "Where are you?" it carried more than confusion. It carried the fatigue of waiting, the strain of carrying unseen burdens, and the fear that perhaps your heart had misread my presence. I watched you reach for clarity, grasp for signs, and hope for a moment that would quiet the storm inside you. Your question wasn't small. It came from a place so deep that even you didn't fully understand it. And because it came from such depth, I received it with tenderness rather than disappointment. You often assume that such questions reveal the weakness of your faith, but they actually reveal its depth. You wouldn't ask where I am unless you wanted me near. You wouldn't search for my presence unless something inside you still believed I could be found. Even in your uncertainty, the question itself was an act of connection, a reaching beyond your fear toward something bigger than what your eyes could see. I don't turn away from that. I lean into it. I know the mixture of exhaustion and longing behind your plea, the part of you that wants to trust, the part that fears you're slipping, the part that wonders if you somehow drifted too far. I saw the quiet tremors in your chest when you asked the question, the hesitation in your breath, the way you braced yourself for the possibility of silence. But the silence you feared was not my absence. It was simply the space where your heart became honest enough to reveal what it truly needed. You haven't walked a single moment without my presence surrounding you, even though your senses could not always detect it. I've been beside you in your confusion, in your restlessness, in the moments when your thoughts spiraled into places you never intended to explore. I've been near in the days when you moved through routines with a heaviness no one else noticed. I've been near in the nights when your mind refused to settle. My nearness was not measured by your awareness of it. My nearness remained because I chose to stay. When you cried, "Where are you?" my answer began forming long before the question reached your lips. I was already leaning in, already preparing the comfort, clarity, and strength your heart would need. Your plea did not push me away. It opened a doorway for deeper revelation. You asked where I am, and here is my answer. I am right where I have always been, near, attentive, invested, and present in ways your heart is slowly learning how to recognize. You've spent so much of your life believing that the weight of connection rested entirely on your shoulders, that you had to strive, perform, and pursue in order to stay close to me. You feared that if you slowed down, even for a moment, you would lose me. You carried the pressure of maintaining spiritual intensity, thinking your devotion needed to be flawless to remain accepted. That belief created exhaustion deep inside you, an exhaustion you rarely acknowledged because you mistook it for normal. You didn't realize that your heart had been running, sprinting, stretching itself thin in an effort to hold on to something you thought could slip away at any moment. But you were never the one doing the chasing. You were the one being pursued. Every moment you believed you had to earn my nearness was a moment influenced by old wounds, places where people left, where love was conditional, where relationships shifted without warning. Those memories convinced you that closeness must be maintained through effort, and that if you failed to keep up, you'd be forgotten or replaced. But my love does not operate that way. I've been pursuing you from the very beginning, not with force but with steady, patient commitment. While you feared losing me, I was surrounding you. While you worried about drifting, I was drawing closer. While you tried to perfect yourself to earn connection, I was moving toward you in your imperfections. You assumed you had to run after me, unaware that my presence was already chasing down every corner of your life. I've seen how hard you try, how you push yourself to pray even when weary, how you battle distraction, how you fight doubt, how you return again and again hoping to feel something real. Your efforts matter, but they don't sustain our connection. I sustain it. Your desire for me is precious, but it's not the foundation of our relationship. My desire for you is, I move toward you in your confusion, your vulnerability, your questions, your failures, your victories, your quiet moments, and your chaotic ones. You think your inconsistencies weaken the connection, but they don't. My pursuit doesn't depend on your performance. It's rooted in who you are and who I am. You've been trying to chase what has already been walking beside you. You've been trying to reach what has already reached for you. You've been trying to hold on to what has already secured you. You aren't chasing me through the wilderness of your emotions. I've been following you into every shadowed place, every moment of fear, every decision you didn't know how to make. My pursuit is not frantic. It is faithful. You can rest. You can breathe. The connection you long for doesn't depend on running. It depends on realizing you're already found. You've grown so accustomed to navigating the fog that you can hardly remember what clarity feels like. You've become used to second-guessing your instincts, questioning your guidance, and hesitating with decisions because the silence stretched for so long. But something within you has started shifting, quietly at first, almost imperceptibly. You felt subtle nudges, faint stirrings, unexpected moments of insight that felt different from your own thoughts. These aren't coincidences. They're the early signs of a season changing, a season where my voice, once muted by the weight of your circumstances, will begin to surface with new strength. You didn't imagine the difficulty of the previous season. It truly was quieter, heavier, slower, and more uncertain than anything you anticipated. You were being reshaped in ways that required stillness, patience, and endurance. But now, what was once veiled is beginning to open. Your inner world has been softened by the perseverance you built. Your discernment has been sharpened by the questions you asked. Your spirit has been steadied by the fears you confronted. And because of this inner transformation, you're becoming more able to perceive my voice, not through emotional intensity, but through deeper awareness. This next season isn't about dramatic signs or overwhelming moments. It's about clarity rising from within you. You will sense guidance in places that once felt confusing. You will experience peace in decisions that previously felt tangled. You will recognize my promptings with a confidence you didn't have before. My voice will become clear not because I changed the way I speak, but because you've changed the way you hear. The silence taught you to listen with more than your emotions. It taught you to listen with your spirit. You'll find yourself noticing connections you previously overlooked. You'll feel drawn toward choices that align with your true identity. You'll sense warning where danger approaches and comfort where truth is present. You'll feel nudges that guide you forward and restraint that keeps you from harm. My voice will not shout. It will resonate. It will feel like alignment, clarity, steadiness, direction, and a quiet confidence rising from a place you once believed was too wounded to trust. This season will not be defined by confusion. It will be defined by recognition. You will begin to understand what you once misunderstood. You will notice my guidance where you once only noticed silence. You are entering a time where the fog will lift, the noise will fade, and my voice, steady, gentle, unmistakable, will meet you with a clarity that affirms how deeply you are led, held, and known. You've been moving through your days convinced that you've been standing still, believing that your progress has stalled, and assuming that your inner world has remained unchanged simply because your emotions didn't reflect momentum. Yet in the quiet, unnoticed spaces of your journey, something profound has been taking shape inside you. While you were questioning whether anything meaningful was happening, your spirit was stretching, maturing, deepening, and strengthening in ways you didn't have the perspective to see. Growth rarely announces itself. It lives in the subtle shifts, how you respond to pressure differently, how you recover from pain more steadily, how you interpret circumstances with a wider understanding, and how you now withstand what would have broken you in earlier seasons. I've watched these changes unfold within you with great care, knowing that one day you would look back and recognize that you were growing even in the moments you assumed were wasted. There were days when you felt as if your prayers carried no weight, yet your persistence shaped resilience. There were nights when discouragement made you question your identity, yet your decision to rise again the next morning cultivated endurance. You faced silent fear, internal tension, unanswered questions, and emotional exhaustion, none of which you would have chosen, but all of which became soil for transformation. You handled circumstances that demanded more emotional and spiritual strength than you had access to at the time, and yet you navigated them with the courage you didn't even know you possessed. That courage became the foundation for a deeper strength, one that now runs through the core of who you are. You tend to measure growth by external outcomes, by what you accomplish, what you feel, or what others can see. But I measure growth by your capacity to hold hope in difficulty, by the way you seek truth when confusion tries to cloud your mind, by how quickly you return to peace after being shaken, and by how deeply you desire alignment even when life feels chaotic. All of these qualities have expanded within you. You may not see the transformation clearly because daily progress is subtle, but I see the difference. I see the maturity forming beneath the surface, the increased sensitivity in your discernment, and the greater tenderness in your compassion. These things illuminate the growth you've been undergoing without realizing it. Your spirit has not stayed the same. It has strengthened in silence, matured in uncertainty, expanded through struggle, and deepened through reflection. What felt like stagnation was actually refinement. What felt like going backward was preparation for forward movement. I've been shaping you continuously, even in the chapters where you felt overlooked or forgotten. Your growth is real, present, and purposeful, and it will become increasingly clear as your path unfolds. There were times you looked at your circumstances and begged for an immediate way out, for relief, for escape, for an abrupt end to the pressure weighing on your heart. You wanted the discomfort to leave quickly, the confusion to clear instantly, and the heaviness to dissolve in a moment. I understand why you felt that urgency. When pain presses against your spirit, the most natural instinct is to desire escape. But I've been working in ways that go beyond rescue. Rescue removes you temporarily from a situation. Renewal transforms you within it. While you were praying for a door to open so you could run, I was reshaping your inner world so you could walk forward with strength that lasts far beyond the moment. You didn't notice the renewal at first because it often begins subtly. It starts with your thought patterns shifting, your emotional responses settling, your fears losing their grip, and your sense of purpose awakening again in small, almost unnoticeable increments. Renewal touches the parts of you that have been tired for years, the parts that rescue alone could never change. You've been tired not only from circumstances, but from internal battles, from memories you carried too long, from expectations that weighed on you, from burdens that shaped your identity more than you realized. Rescue could have removed you from the situation, but it would not have healed the roots beneath the surface. Renewal reaches those roots. Think of how many times you begged for circumstances to shift, yet something deeper stirred instead. You found glimpses of clarity in places where confusion dominated. You discovered strength in moments when exhaustion should have overcome you. You experienced discernment that didn't come from logic alone, but from an inner awakening. These weren't coincidental. They were indicators of renewal already happening within you. I've been transforming your understanding of yourself, your relationships, your priorities, and your purpose. What once drained you is losing its power. What once defined you no longer carries the same authority. What once silenced your voice is now being replaced by confidence that rises quietly but persistently. Rescue could have changed your circumstances, but renewal changes your entire internal structure, your identity, your vision, your capacity, your resilience, your hope. And because of this renewal, you will be able to step into future seasons with a strength that remains even when pressures return. This is why I focused on renewal rather than escape. You weren't forsaken, you were being made new. What I'm building within you is far greater than the relief you were asking for. You've looked at the timing of your life and wondered where the disconnect happened. You expected certain doors to open sooner, certain answers to arrive earlier, certain breakthroughs to come at the moment you felt most desperate for them. Instead, you encountered pauses, detours, and long stretches of waiting that left you questioning whether something was wrong, either with you, with your path, or with my involvement. You interpreted the delay as stagnation at best and abandonment at worst. But what you call delay, I call alignment. Alignment requires careful timing, precise positioning, and the unfolding of circumstances that must reach the right moment before they can support the weight of what you're meant to step into. You don't always see the intricate details at play, the relationships being prepared behind the scenes, the opportunities forming in places hidden from your view, the internal growth you needed before stepping into the next chapter, and the emotional healing necessary for your heart to thrive in what comes next. There are people you're meant to meet, doors you're meant to walk through, and roles you're meant to fill, but each requires the right conditions. If you step into certain moments too early, they would not sustain you. If you met certain people before your heart healed, those connections wouldn't blossom. If you received certain opportunities before your spirit matured, they would burden rather than bless you. What seems delayed is actually synchronized with timing beyond your current understanding. Alignment is often quiet. It looks like nothing happening, while in reality everything is happening at once. I've been positioning you for moments that will require the version of you being formed right now, not the version you used to be and not the one who was rushing through fear or urgency. This aligning work touches every aspect of your life, your desires, your relationships, your values, your rhythms, your direction. And as you shift internally, circumstances around you shift accordingly. You may feel frustrated because you don't see the progress, but alignment is not measured by visible movement. It is measured by readiness. There will come a moment when the pieces converge, when clarity replaces uncertainty, when opportunity meets preparation, when timing meets desire, when doors open in ways that feel natural rather than forced. When that happens, you'll recognize why the waiting was necessary. You'll see how every delay protected you, shaped you, strengthened you, and positioned you to receive what is meant for you. I haven't been holding you back. I've been setting you up for a future that matches the fullness of who you are becoming. You often overlook the very places where your faith has been growing because they don't look dramatic or impressive from the outside. You picture faith as something bold and loud, an unwavering certainty, a fearless confidence, a radiant expression of trust. But the most powerful faith rarely appears that way. It grows quietly in the unseen parts of your life, forming in small decisions, private battles, and moments where you choose hope despite inner tension. I've watched you cling to belief in ways the world will never applaud, and yet those unseen choices have become pillars within your spirit. Your hidden faith rises in the moments you talk yourself out of giving up, in the moments you take one more step even when you feel empty, in the moments you show kindness that no one else notices, in the moments you choose integrity when compromise feels easier. These are not small things. They are the very things shaping the strength you carry now. You underestimate the depth of your faith because you compare yourself to others or to the version of yourself you imagine you should be. You think real faith is measured in emotional intensity or public confidence, but the truth is far more profound. Your faith strengthened itself in the nights you cried yet chose to pray anyway. It deepened in the seasons where I felt distant yet you kept searching. It matured in the moments where confusion clouded your mind yet you made decisions rooted in goodness. It expanded in the places where you felt unseen yet you continued to love, give, and pursue what was right. These moments built muscles in your spirit you haven't even recognized yet. They've prepared you for challenges that once would have crushed you but now cannot overtake you. I've been guiding you through this process not by demanding perfection, but by honoring your persistence. Your hidden faith grew because you were willing to show up again and again, even when you felt weak or inadequate. It flourished in the shadows, in the daily choices you believed didn't matter, in the emotional storms you battled privately, and in the questions you asked without receiving immediate answers. And now, that faith stands within you like quiet strength, steady, grounded, resilient. You may think you're just surviving, but in reality, you've been growing. You've been becoming someone capable of holding more than you once imagined. This hidden faith is becoming a foundation you will build your future upon. It is the reason you won't collapse under pressure. It is the reason you will step with confidence into seasons that would have terrified you in the past. It is the reason you can walk with discernment, clarity, and wisdom. What once felt small and unnoticed has become the strongest part of who you are. And as your journey continues, this hidden faith, refined, strengthened, and deepened, will reveal itself in powerful ways, shaping your steps, your decisions, and your ability to trust even when the path ahead feels uncertain. There are wounds inside you that you've never named, places in your heart that have been aching longer than your memory can accurately trace. Some of these wounds were formed by experiences you dismissed as insignificant. Others were shaped by words that sounded casual but cut deeply. Some were inherited emotionally from environments that didn't nurture your sense of safety, while others develop as a result of carrying burdens no one else knew you were holding. You've learned to adjust around these unhealed places, building coping mechanisms and defenses that helped you survive but now keep you from fully experiencing peace. You haven't always recognized these areas as wounds because they've become so familiar. Yet even without your awareness, I've been tending to them gently, touching what lies beneath the surface, healing what you have not yet been able to describe. There are patterns in your reactions that puzzled you, why certain situations trigger emotions that feel disproportionate, why certain fears surface without warning, why certain memories still sting, why certain relational dynamics exhaust you. These reactions aren't random. They are signposts pointing toward deeper wounds you never had the chance to address. You thought they were flaws in your personality, but they were actually indicators of places needing care. I've been working in these hidden spaces, softening what had become hardened, soothing what had been inflamed, releasing what had been trapped inside you for years. This healing is subtle because it reaches the layers that words haven't touched, the layers you've only felt but never fully understood. My healing often begins before your awareness catches up. You'll start to notice that certain things no longer upset you as easily, that old anxieties no longer dominate your thinking, that past pain no longer dictates your decisions. You'll move through moments that once overwhelmed you and realize you handled them with more calm, more wisdom, more strength. This isn't accidental. It's evidence that healing has already begun. I've been working in the background of your emotions, restoring what life tried to fracture, replacing old narratives with truth, and dissolving burdens that weren't yours to carry. You don't need to diagnose every wound before I heal it. My understanding reaches places you haven't discovered yet. As this healing continues, you'll notice lightness where heaviness once lived. You'll discover clarity where confusion used to cloud your heart. You'll experience peace where tension once settled. Healing doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, reshaping your inner world until one day you realize you're walking with freedom you never imagined possible. I'm healing what you haven't identified yet, and soon your heart will recognize the restoration unfolding within you. You once relied on strong emotional experiences, clear signs, or dramatic moments to feel connected to me. Those feelings made you confident in your direction, and when they faded, you questioned whether you had drifted or failed. But something much deeper hath been forming inside you, an ability to recognize my presence not through intensity, but through stillness. You've been learning to sense me in subtle moments, in gentle shifts of perception, in quiet inner nudges, and in the gradual unfolding of peace. This kind of recognition takes time to develop because it grows in places where certainty doesn't shout. It whispers. And even though you didn't realize it, your spirit has been attuning itself to these quieter frequencies. You've walked through seasons where you couldn't rely on emotional reassurance, and during those seasons, you became more observant in your spirit. You started noticing the slight changes in your thoughts when I was guiding you. You began to sense a difference in your atmosphere when truth approached. You discovered that peace doesn't always arrive as a feeling. Sometimes it comes as a soft conviction that steadies you without explanation. You recognize that my presence isn't confined to intense moments. It can be found in everyday rhythms. While you drive, while you breathe, while you pause before making a decision, while you sit in silence and allow your heart to rest. This ability to discern me without noise is becoming one of the greatest strengths you possess. It will carry you through seasons where emotions fluctuate, where circumstances shift, and where clarity doesn't come instantly. You're learning to trust me without needing constant signs, to follow my guidance even when you can't articulate why, and to sense my nearness even when life around you feels chaotic. You are developing a quieter faith, a deeper sensitivity, a more grounded awareness, one that is not easily shaken by external turmoil. You will begin to notice that I speak through alignment, through direction, through peace that doesn't match your surroundings, through tension that warns you when something is off, through inner clarity that arrives exactly when you need it. This kind of connection is intimate, steady, and resilient. It doesn't depend on noise, it depends on closeness. And you are becoming someone who can recognize that closeness in places where you once assumed it could not exist. There was a moment, longer than you expected, where the quiet surrounding your life felt heavy enough to unsettle the deepest parts of your heart. You kept waiting for something to break through that stillness. Something to reassure you that you hadn't been abandoned, that you weren't walking alone through unseen valleys. But the silence lingered, stretching across days, weeks, even seasons, and you began to interpret it as emptiness. That interpretation weighed on you, convincing you something was wrong, broken, or fading. Yet what you didn't realize was that the ground beneath your feet had become sacred. This quiet was not a void. It was a sanctified space where I brought you closer to truth than noise ever could. In this silence, I invited you into a depth that could not be reached through constant movement or emotional intensity. The quiet you feared was the very atmosphere where I was building something eternal within you. You didn't feel holy because holiness rarely feels dramatic. It grows in the moments where you slow down enough to hear the unfiltered echoes of your own soul. In the quiet, distractions loosen their grip. The noise of comparison, pressure, and expectation faded enough for you to hear the faint stirrings of your truest self. You encountered thoughts you'd pushed aside for years. You met longings you had tried to outrun. You faced questions you never gave yourself permission to ask. And though these realizations felt uncomfortable, they were invitations, doors opening into deeper healing, deeper understanding, and deeper connection. This ground became holy not because you performed anything spectacular, but because you allowed yourself to stand in the raw honesty of who you are. There were days when the silence felt isolating, almost cold, but I was nearer in those moments than in the seasons where you felt flooded with emotion. I wasn't speaking less. I was speaking differently. I used the quiet to refine your listening, to expand your awareness, to sharpen your discernment. I let the external noise settle because there were truths I needed to plant inside you, truths that would take root slowly, truth that needed space free from chaos. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. You weren't being distanced. You were being drawn deeper. Every moment of silence became a classroom, a sanctuary, a place where I wrote strength into your spirit in ways that will surface later in ways you cannot yet imagine. You will look back on this season and recognize how sacred it truly was. You will see that the silence shaped your confidence, not by giving you answers immediately, but by anchoring your spirit in stillness. You walked on holy ground without realizing it, learning to trust in ways that will guide you for the rest of your life. There is a stirring inside you that you can't quite explain, like the faint spark that appears before a flame returns. You may not fully recognize it yet, but something in your spirit has started shifting. Moments of clarity have begun to surface where confusion once lived. A quiet excitement flickers beneath the heaviness, almost like a whisper guiding you toward something new. This is not your imagination. It is the early sign of my voice moving toward you with renewed strength. You've endured a season where every word felt muted, where you strained to hear me and received only fragments, but that season is coming to an end. I am preparing to speak to you in a way that reignites what you thought had dimmed beyond recovery. You've carried disappointment like a heavy garment draped over your shoulders, and it dulled the sharpness of your hope. You questioned whether passion would ever return, whether the fire inside you would ever burn the way it once did. You wondered if maybe you had reached the limit of your growth or the end of your purpose. But I've been tending the embers of your spirit, keeping them from extinguishing even when all you saw were ashes. I've been preserving something inside you that could not be stolen by silence or weariness. And now, the flame that once flickered weakly is ready to rise again, not forced, not artificial, but naturally awakened by my presence moving deeper into your life. The way I will speak to you in this next season will feel different. It won't be dependent on emotion, though emotion may come. It won't be defined by dramatic moments, though you may experience profound clarity. My voice will ignite understanding, direction, and desire in ways that feel both powerful and peaceful at the same time. You will sense my guidance in your decisions. You will feel a burning alignment in your convictions. You will notice your heart responding to truth with a renewed urgency. What once felt distant will feel intimate. What once felt confusing will feel purposeful. This fire will not overwhelm you. It will illuminate you. It will burn away lies that clung to your identity, fears that held you captive, and doubts that clouded your vision. You will feel alive again in places you assumed were permanently numb. Your hope will sharpen. Your purpose will rise. Your spirit will respond to me with a passion formed not from emotion alone, but from depth, maturity, and clarity. This fire will not fade quickly. It will steady you, strengthen you, and guide you into what comes next. When you first felt the distance, you panicked. You interpreted the shift as rejection, imagining that something in you had changed, or that something in me had shifted away from you. The absence of clarity felt like a wall closing around your heart, and the silence felt like a door shutting in your face. You grieved what you thought you had lost. You feared that something had broken in the connection you once cherished. But abandonment was never the truth of what you were experiencing. The shift was an invitation, one that your heart wasn't ready to interpret but was absolutely ready to step into. I wasn't pulling away. I was pulling you deeper. The invitation came disguised as confusion because it required you to seek in new ways. It came disguised as silence because it invited you to listen differently. It came disguised as stillness because it required you to stop relying on patterns you had outgrown. You weren't being pushed out. You were being drawn into a new stage of intimacy that could only be built through trust rather than constant sensation. You assumed you had lost something, but I was actually extending an opportunity to gain more than you imagined. You were being called beyond familiar territory, beyond predictable comfort, beyond the surface-level connection you once settled for. This invitation brought you into depth. Depth in self-awareness, depth in discernment, depth in faith, depth in understanding. I watched how you wrestled with the uncertainty, how you questioned your worth, how you analyzed every detail searching for something you did wrong. None of those fears held truth, yet I understood why they surfaced. Past experiences condition you to expect that distance means departure, that quiet means disinterest, that silence means rejection. But my nature is like any relationship you've known. When I lead you into unfamiliar spaces, it isn't to test your value, it is to reveal your capacity. Every step into this deeper invitation required vulnerability, and you embraced it even while trembling internally. That courage mattered more than you realize. You grew through the invitation long before you recognized it. You became more resilient, more surrendered, more open, more attuned to the subtleties of my presence. You discovered strength in patience, clarity in uncertainty, and wisdom in reflection. You didn't lose me. You found a new dimension of me. And the very places where you feared abandonment will soon become the places where you recognize profound closeness. You were never being pushed away. You were being welcomed into something deeper, something lasting, something transformative. The invitation still stands, and you are walking in it beautifully. You've endured stretches of time where nothing seemed to shift, long days where you questioned whether anything meaningful was happening beneath the surface, long nights where your thoughts kept circling the same questions without finding clear answers. You grew tired of hoping for movement while everything around you felt still. The waiting felt like a hallway with no doors, a pause that stretched far beyond what your heart had energy for. You wondered if you misheard, misread, or misunderstood the direction you thought you were heading. Yet what you perceived as stagnation was a season rich with unseen formation. I was working in depths you could not access on your own, shaping your inner world so that you would be able to stand securely in what comes next. Your waiting wasn't empty. It was an environment designed with precision, timing, and purpose. You've grown more in this waiting season than you realize. You learned to let your desires sift themselves, allowing what was shallow to fall away and what was genuine to rise to the surface. You learned to distinguish between impulse and calling, between temporary longing and lasting purpose. You discovered what you truly value, not by receiving everything you wanted, but by sitting long enough in the silence to understand what your heart actually needs. You gained emotional depth, spiritual clarity, and strength that doesn't crumble under pressure. These things didn't appear suddenly. They were cultivated slowly, carefully, intentionally during the stillness that frustrated you so deeply. Waiting taught you what movement never could. It taught you patience without passivity, trust without constant reassurance, endurance without applause, and maturity without shortcuts. It trained your heart to remain steady even when circumstances didn't cooperate. It taught you how to hold hope without manipulating outcomes. It taught you how to listen beneath the noise of your own expectations. These skills are priceless, and they will become essential as you step into the chapters ahead, chapters that require stability, wisdom, and emotional resilience. Nothing in your waiting has been overlooked. Every prayer whispered into exhaustion, every moment when you questioned whether you were still on the right path, every time you forced yourself to try again despite weariness. All of that was part of a greater shaping. I haven't withheld progress to punish you or to test your strength. I've allowed this season to unfold because what I'm preparing requires a foundation that cannot be built quickly. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You haven't missed your moment. You've been aligning, maturing, strengthening, and becoming ready in ways you could not have accelerated on your own. And soon, you will see how everything you thought was wasted time was actually sacred time that built you into the person capable of carrying what's coming. There are pieces of your story that still feel confusing, chapters you haven't made peace with, decisions that feel unclear, and paths that seem to lead nowhere. You've tried to make sense of certain seasons, only to find that they refuse to offer simple explanations. You've asked why some doors open only to close again, why some relationships entered your life only to fade, why some opportunities seemed promising only to dissolve before they could flourish. These moments left you questioning the value of the journey, wondering if you misread the signs or wandered in the wrong direction. But clarity is approaching, and with it will come a profound understanding of how carefully everything had been woven together. You will look back and see my fingerprints on moments you once labeled as meaningless. There were steps you took that felt tentative, uncertain, almost accidental, but none of them were random. Each one moved you toward a deeper truth, a clearer identity, and a more aligned direction. Even your detours served a purpose. They revealed parts of yourself that needed healing. They exposed patterns that needed transformation. They brought you face to face with fears that would have sabotaged your future had they remained hidden. You thought you were wandering, but you were being guided. You thought you were moving in circles, but you were moving inward, toward the core of who you are meant to become. You haven't yet seen how these threads connect, but soon the perspective you've been missing will come into view. You will recognize why certain delays protected you, why certain relationships taught you exactly what they did, why certain disappointments redirected your path, and why certain struggles strengthened you far beyond what comfort ever could. Understanding will not arrive as a vague idea. It will come with clarity, almost like a sudden illumination that reveals the full picture. You will realize you were never abandoned to randomness. You were being shaped with intention. When this clarity arrives, your trust will deepen in ways that no teaching or advice could have produced. You will see that I was guiding not just your victories, but your losses, not just your joy, but your grief, not just your progress, but your pauses. Every step, steady or trembling, held purpose. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. And the revelation of the truth will free you from regret, release you from confusion, and prepare you for the confidence required in the next chapter of your life. You will look back and finally understand that my hand was with you in every step, even when you could not see it. You don't realize the weight of the courage you've shown simply by continuing to believe in moments where belief felt fragile. You think your faith has been small because it didn't feel loud or visible, but heaven measures faith differently than you do. Heaven sees the tears you wiped away quietly before choosing hope again. Heaven sees the moments you sat in your car gathering yourself because you weren't sure you could handle another day. Heaven sees the times you whispered prayers with trembling breath, offering words that barely formed but were filled with sincerity. These moments have carried a power far beyond what you imagine. Every time you acted in trust rather than fear, even in the smallest ways, you moved something in the unseen realm. Your prayers have not echoed into emptiness. Your faith has not been ignored. Your obedience, imperfect but genuine, has stirred movement you cannot yet perceive. You underestimate your impact because you measure strength by confidence, but heaven measures it by perseverance. When you held on to belief while disappointment pulled at your spirit, the atmosphere around you shifted. When you chose kindness despite your own weariness, your actions echoed beyond your own life. When you forgave even though the wound remained tender, healing began not only in your heart but in generational patterns you don't yet recognize. Your faith has done more than sustain you. It has shifted the direction of your life and the lives connected to yours. You often imagine that moving heaven requires dramatic gestures or extraordinary spiritual performance. But heaven moves when the heart chooses truth over fear, surrender over control, hope over despair, alignment over avoidance. You have made these choices repeatedly, quietly, faithfully, even when no one applauded, even when no one encouraged you, even when you doubted yourself. I watched each choice with profound tenderness, knowing how difficult they were. Your faith has been like a steady beat in the spiritual realm, subtle but powerful, small but consistent, quiet but transformative. There are blessings, alignments, opportunities, and breakthroughs forming around you right now because of decisions you made in seasons where you felt weak. You didn't see the ripple of your actions, but heaven did. You didn't feel the weight of your prayers, but heaven did. You didn't realize the strength hidden in your endurance, but heaven did. And soon, the results of that unseen movement will begin to surface, not as random gifts, but as responses to the faith you carried when everything inside you tried to pull you toward doubt. Your faith, even in its smallest form, has moved heaven, and heaven has already begun moving toward you. There is a strength in you that has been dormant, not destroyed, quiet, not vanished, waiting beneath layers of exhaustion, disappointment, and the emotional storms that have worn you down over time. You've wondered where your bravery went, why the boldness you once carried seems harder to access, and why uncertainty feels stronger than confidence in certain moments. But your courage has not been lost. It has been bruised, stretched, and tested in ways that left it temporarily hidden beneath the weight of everything you've endured. I've been watching how you move through life even when fear and fatigue press against you. I've noticed the way you keep trying, even when the path looks unclear. Your courage has been revealing itself in small ways, quiet decisions, steady steps, honest prayers, vulnerable admissions. But now, I am restoring it in fuller measure. This restoration will come as a sudden surge of emotion that fades quickly. It will come as a deepening certainty, one that grows slowly yet firmly, strengthening your posture from the inside out. I am giving you clarity where confusion once clouded your decisions. I am lifting heaviness from your shoulders so your spirit can breathe again. I'm redirecting your focus from imagined failure to the truth of who you are. Stronger than the seasons meant to break you, wiser than the wounds you survived, and braver than the battles that tried to silence you. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to keep moving when fear tries to freeze you. You've been doing that in ways you haven't recognized, and now I'm reinforcing every place where your spirit has felt thin. You will start sensing it in moments where hesitation used to dominate. You'll notice yourself responding differently to challenges, feeling grounded where you once felt unsettled. Old fears that used to intimidate you will lose their power. Lies you carried about your worth will loosen their hold, and truths about your identity will rise to the surface with renewed conviction. Your courage will no longer feel forced. It will feel natural, aligned, steady. I'm not asking you to muster bravery on your own. I'm breathing life back into the parts of you that once walked with confidence, conviction, and vision. I'm restoring the voice within you that says, I can step forward even when I don't see the entire path. This restoration will touch every area of your life, your relationships, your decisions, your dreams, your boundaries, your self-worth. You will not move timidly into what's ahead. You will move with assurance, carrying a strength that is not rooted in temporary emotion, but in quiet truth. The courage returning to you is not the same courage you once had. It is stronger, deeper, wiser, and more compassionate. It is courage refined by experience, shaped by endurance, and strengthened by grace. This courage will guide you into a future your fear once told you wasn't possible. And you will walk into it fully equipped, fully supported, and completely restored. There have been days when you felt like parts of you were sinking. Your motivation, your joy, your clarity, your connection to purpose. You felt yourself drifting into emotional fatigue, spiritual numbness, or a weariness so deep you didn't know how to climb out of it. You questioned whether you would ever return to the version of yourself that once felt vibrant, hopeful, and alive. You feared this low place might become permanent. But what you've been experiencing is not the end of your strength. It is the ground from which your spirit will rise with greater power than before. Your spirit is not broken. It is being renewed. It is being prepared for rising that will not be fragile or momentary, but steady, resilient, and grounded. The heaviness you've been carrying wasn't a sign that your spirit was dying. It was a sign that you were transitioning. Transitions often feel like decline because the old energy fades before the new strength arrives. You went through emotional winters, quiet, barren, still. But every winter has a purpose, and every winter carries the promise of spring. Your spirit has been gathering what it needs beneath the surface, absorbing truth, shedding lies, dissolving pressures, and realigning desires. Even in the moments where you felt disconnected, something deeper was rising. Your clarity, your sensitivity, your discernment, your resilience. You haven't been sinking. You've been settling into deeper soil so that what grows next will be stronger than anything that came before. Soon, you'll feel it. Not a sudden rush, but a gradual awakening. Energy returning in places where fatigue once lived. Peace settling where anxiety used to dominate. Hope sparking where discouragement tried to smother your vision. You'll wake up one day and feel lighter than the day before. You'll find yourself responding with grace where you once reacted with overwhelm. You'll notice clarity replacing confusion, and confidence replacing hesitation. This rising will not rely on your perfection. It will be guided by my presence, strengthening what life tried to weaken. Your spirit will be designed to wait. It will rise because the season that tried to suffocate your fire has instead prepared the ground for its expansion. You will not remain in this low place. You will not remain disconnected, uncertain, or weary. Your spirit is rising, not to who you used to be, but to who you are becoming. And this new strength will accompany you into every part of your life, transforming how you think, how you choose, how you love, how you trust, and how you walk forward. You are rising, even now, even here, even before you fully feel it. There are areas of your heart where the light dimmed long ago, places where dreams faded, desires quieted, confidence weakened, and hope became distant. These parts of you felt untouched by anything encouraging, as if they had fallen into a silence too deep for revival. You told yourself those parts didn't matter anymore, or that you were better off without them. But I saw the emptiness you tried to bury. I noticed the sighs you released when you thought no one was listening. I recognized the heaviness you carried in those internal places that felt too fragile to examine. And now, I am speaking life into those very spaces, the ones you assumed were beyond repair. Life doesn't return all at once. It comes as a warmth that slowly spreads, as clarity that begins to soften old confusion, as desire that quietly awakens where numbness once lived. You'll experience memories resurfacing not to haunt you, but to heal you. You'll feel old passions stirring, not to overwhelm you, but to guide you. You'll notice new ideas forming, not from pressure, but from inspiration. You'll realize that the places you labeled dead were never lifeless. They were waiting for the right moment to awaken. And that moment is now unfolding. I'm breathing gentleness into your wounds, strength into your insecurities, direction into your uncertainty, and peace into your turmoil. I'm loosening the emotional knots you've carried for years. I'm restoring possibilities you stopped believing in. I'm awakening capacities within you that were never fully expressed. You'll begin to see that the death you felt inside wasn't an ending. It was the soil where something deeper, purer, and stronger has been forming. What I speak over you cannot fail. My words don't touch the surface. They reach the roots. They transform the places where lies once lived, where fear once ruled, where sorrow once anchored you. You will feel life returning not only to your dreams, but to your identity. You'll see yourself differently. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll hope differently. Life is entering the places where despair once settled, and soon you will experience the unfolding of that renewal in every part of who you are: mind, heart, body, purpose, and spirit. You are not dying inside. You are being revived. And soon, every part of you that felt dim will shine with a strength you once believed was impossible. There have been moments when the silence around you grew so dense that it pressed into your heart like a weight, convincing you that you were slipping out of sight, unnoticed, unvalued, unseen. You tried to talk yourself out of that fear, reminding yourself of truth you once held tightly, but something about the quiet made the doubt feel louder than your reasoning. You looked around at the lives of others moving forward, unfolding, flourishing, and you wondered if perhaps something about you disqualified you from that same attention, that same nearness, that same sense of divine involvement. Yet while you felt overlooked by circumstances and misunderstood by people, my attention never drifted from you, not even for a moment. I have held every detail of your life in my awareness with a focus that human love cannot match. Even when you felt invisible, I saw everything: your thoughts, your longings, your exhaustion, your attempts at strength. You were never lost in the crowd, never buried in the noise, never placed at the back of my priorities. You've mistaken silence for distance and hardship for abandonment, but neither has ever represented my heart toward you. When you felt forgotten, you were actually standing in a place where I was watching you with a kind of closeness that doesn't always feel emotional but is deeply protective. Some seasons of your life required me to work in ways that were quiet, internal, and hidden from your understanding. I wasn't withholding affection, and I wasn't distracted by other lives. I was guiding you through a stage of growth that could not be rushed or loudly announced. I saw the tension in your spirit, the ache that formed from feeling unseen, and the questions that rose every time your prayers seemed to echo back unanswered. But your prayers were not ignored. Your cries were not overlooked. Your desires were not dismissed. The silence was not evidence of my absence. It was evidence of my involvement in ways deeper than your senses could register. You are held in my awareness with an intensity that does not waver with your emotions. I have counted each day of your struggle, each moment of courage, each breath of longing, each tear that fell when you believed no one would notice. Not one of those moments slipped past me. I have been attentive to your process, your pain, and your perseverance. You are not forgotten, not by time, not by purpose, and never by me. What you have walked through is not unnoticed. It is honored, carried, and woven into something far greater than you can see from where you stand now. My presence has remained, even when you couldn't feel it. And as this journey unfolds, you will begin to see how deeply remembered, deeply valued, and deeply held you have always been. There is a part of you that has been tired for far too long, tired in ways sleep cannot fix, tired in places inside you that no one else has fully understood. You've gone through seasons where hope felt like an old memory, something you used to hold easily but now struggle to grasp. You've tried to rekindle it with positive thoughts, with distractions, with determination, but hope cannot be manufactured by force. It must be breathed into you. And that is what I am doing now. I am speaking into the weary corners of your heart, clearing away the dust that disappointment left behind, opening space for new expectation to enter gently rather than with pressure. This renewal will not feel like a sudden explosion of excitement. It will feel like a soft lifting, subtle but undeniable, almost like your chest learning how to expand again after it being tight for so long. You've carried so many unspoken fears about the future, convincing yourself to prepare for the worst so that disappointment wouldn't crush you again. I saw how you built emotional walls without fully realizing it, how you toned down your desire to avoid the sting of unmet expectations. I watched the way you dimmed your dreams to protect your heart. You interpreted it as wisdom, but it was self-protection born from past wounds. Now, I am gently unraveling those knots. I am returning hope to the places where fear made a home. This hope isn't naive. It is grounded, mature, steady, shaped by everything you've endured and strengthened by everything you've survived. Fresh hope doesn't ignore reality. It transforms the way you see it. You will begin to notice opportunities you overlooked before, not because they weren't there, but because discouragement once clouded your sight. You will feel more energy for the things you once avoided. You will sense a shift in your internal atmosphere, lighter, clearer, more open. Hope is not a feeling that floats above difficulties. It is a strength that rises within them. And I am placing that strength inside you again, gently, intentionally, like a breath returning to lungs that forgot how to expand fully. This hope will guide your decisions, soften your fears, and reacquaint you with anticipation. It will reconnect you with the truth that better things are still possible, not by your own striving, but by my faithfulness. You will find yourself believing again, not out of desperation, but out of renewed confidence. The areas of your heart that settled for survival will awaken with purpose. I am breathing fresh hope into your soul, and it will anchor you more deeply than anything that has ever tried to break you. You've been navigating stretches of life where the road ahead feels foggy, where clarity seems just out of reach, and where your next steps feel more like guesses than guided movements. You've tried to piece together direction from your circumstances, from your instincts, from whatever small signs you could interpret. But even then, uncertainty lingered. You don't like walking without seeing the whole path. It leaves you feeling exposed, vulnerable, and uneasy. But what you can't see is not unknown to me. I know every turn, every detail, every challenge, every breakthrough that waits for you. I see the path in full, from beginning to end, while you see only the stretch directly ahead. And I am guiding you not blindly, but intentionally, with a precision that makes no mistakes. You fear missteps because you assume one wrong decision could ruin your future. But your destiny isn't that fragile. You're not walking on a thin line where one slip sends everything into chaos. You're walking a path designed with grace built into it, grace that covers your uncertainty, grace that redirects you when needed, grace that carries you when you're unsure. You worry about choosing wrong because you think I guide you only through clarity, but I also guide you through instinct, through closed doors, through inner tension, through timing, through peace, and through persistent desires that won't leave because they are woven into your purpose. Even when you think you're stumbling, you're being steered. You're learning to trust not the visible path, but the one who leads you through it. There will be moments where you look back and realize that what felt like wandering was actually the exact route you needed to take. You'll see how certain delay protected you, how certain detours shape you, how certain pauses matured you. you'll understand why I didn't reveal everything at once. Because had you seen the whole journey, you might have rushed ahead unprepared or held back in fear. The partial view wasn't a punishment, it was protection. You don't have to see the entire path to walk it well. All you need is the next step, and I will always provide it at the right time. I'm not asking you to trust the plan. I'm asking you to trust the planner. I know the path you cannot see, and I'm guiding you with a care deeper than anything you've ever known. You will arrive where you're meant to be, without being late, without being lost, and without missing what was meant for you. There is a quiet transformation taking place beneath the surface of your life, one you haven't fully recognized because it isn't loud or dramatic, and it doesn't feel like the strength you expected. You often assume strength is proven through confidence or visible resilience, but true strength is formed in the unseen layers of your heart, where adversity and surrender meet. I've been shaping that strength within you through experiences you would never have chosen for yourself. I've used the moments that pressured you, the seasons that exhausted you, the situations that confused you, and the emotions that stretched you to build something inside you that cannot be shaken. This strength doesn't roar, it roots itself. And even though you felt fragile at times, something deep within you has been solidifying. Your identity, your purpose, your discernment, and your ability to stand firm in truth even when life pulls at you from every side. You haven't recognized this strength because it developed slowly. It formed on days when you were simply trying to keep going. It shaped itself in the nights when you lay awake, sorting through feelings you couldn't put into words. It grew while you navigated difficult relationships, heavy responsibilities, and long seasons of waiting. You thought you were barely holding on, but in reality, you were being fortified. Every time you chose peace over panic, even when the peace didn't feel strong. Every time you chose honesty over avoidance. Every time you refused to let despair have the final word. Every time you moved forward despite uncertainty. These small moments have become the foundation of a strength that is now maturing inside you. You will begin to sense this strength in the way you respond to things that once overwhelmed you. Situations that used to unsettle your emotions will no longer shake you as easily. Conversations that once intimidated you will feel easier to navigate. Decisions that once triggered fear will feel clearer and more grounded. This shift won't come from pretending to be strong. It will come from realizing you already are. You've built endurance through struggle, patience through silence, and wisdom through pain. And now, I am bringing those qualities to the surface so you can walk into your next season with stability that isn't dependent on circumstances. The strength I'm forming in you is not for image or performance, it's for purpose. It's the strength needed to love deeply without losing yourself, to make decisions with clarity rather than fear, to take new steps with courage, and to stand firm when external pressures try to make you retreat. You are stronger than you feel because you are being shaped by a strength that doesn't come from striving. It comes from my presence working within you. And soon, you will look back and realize that the very moments you thought were breaking you were actually building the foundation you needed for what's ahead. There are people, patterns, expectations, and even internal narratives that have been quietly pulling energy from your life. Things you tolerated because you thought they were normal, inevitable, or harmless. Yet over time, these subtle drains have carried a weight that kept you from feeling fully alive. You noticed the fatigue, but didn't always know where it came from. You felt your peace slipping but couldn't pinpoint the cause. You sensed emotional heaviness but couldn't trace its source. I've seen the slow erosion of your joy, the way your mind became cluttered with noise that didn't belong to you, and the subtle pressures that pressed against your heart until you could barely breathe. What you couldn't identify, I've been identifying. What you couldn't release, I've been loosening. And now, I am removing from your life what has quietly drained you for far too long. This removal may feel unfamiliar at first, because some of what I'm extracting had been part of your life for years. It might be a mindset you inherited from past wounds, a responsibility you were never meant to carry, a relationship that stopped nourishing you long ago, or a habit that numbed you instead of healing you. You became accustomed to their weight, convinced that feeling tired, overwhelmed, or emotionally scattered was just part of life. But you were never meant to live in a state of constant depletion. I am clearing the things that have been blocking your peace, dimming your vision, and limiting your capacity to grow. Some removals will feel like relief. Others will feel like release. And a few will feel like destruction before they reveal themselves as liberation. As these drains lift, you'll notice a new clarity forming. Thoughts that once spiraled will settle. Emotional tension that felt normal will begin to loosen. Energies you believed were permanently lost will quietly return. You'll feel more present in your own life, more grounded in your choices, more at home within your own soul. It will feel as though weight is being lifted not in one moment, but layer by layer, until you realize how much lighter you've become. I'm not removing these things to punish you. I'm removing them to open space for joy, peace, purpose, and alignment. What drains you cannot remain where I'm leading you. The next chapters of your life require a heart that is free, a mind that is clear, and a spirit that is not bound by what once kept you small. As I remove the drains, I am also restoring the flow of energy, creativity, love, and strength you thought you had lost. You will soon discover that you were never weak, you were simply carrying too much. And now, that burden is being lifted so you can move forward in the fullness you were always meant to carry. There was a time when my presence felt close, almost tangible, when moments of peace, clarity, and connection came easily, and your heart responded with warmth and familiarity. Then came the quieter season, the one where emotions dulled, where prayer felt heavy, where spiritual senses felt muted, and where the stillness made you wonder whether something inside you had changed. You thought you had lost something essential, that your sensitivity had diminished, that your spirit had somehow become less receptive. But that wasn't the truth. What you experienced was a necessary quieting, a reset, a recalibration, not a loss. And now, you're entering a season where your awareness of my presence will awaken again, and you will feel me in ways that bring comfort, reassurance, and renewal to your soul. This renewed awareness will arrive with overwhelming force. It will come gently at first, a sudden peace in a moment that would normally unsettle you, a quiet knowing that appears without explanation, a sense of warmth during prayer, a soft stirring in your chest when you reflect, a subtle clarity that guides your decisions. These aren't coincidences. They are the early signs of your spirit reawakening after the long stretch of silence. You're not going backwards. You're returning to something deeper than what you had before. This time, the connection won't rely on emotion alone. It will rest on trust, maturity, and alignment. You will feel me in ways that are both familiar and new. Familiar, because your soul remembers my voice even after quiet seasons. New, because the stillness has refined your ability to notice me beyond feelings. You'll sense my presence in moments of rest, in moments of courage, in moments of honesty, and even in ordinary moments that suddenly feel softer and more meaningful. You'll recognize guidance in places where you used to feel lost. You'll discover peace in decisions that once triggered anxiety. You'll find that your spiritual senses are sharper, clearer, and more responsive, not because I am speaking louder, but because your awareness has become more attuned. In this season, the heaviness that once sat on your spirit will begin to lift. Your heart will feel lighter, your thoughts more hopeful, your vision more open. You'll return to a place where my presence feels like home, not distant, not silent, not unreachable, but near, steady, and intimately involved in your life. You didn't lose me during the quiet season. You were simply being prepared for a deeper connection. Now, that connection is awakening again. And as it awakens, you will move with confidence, with peace, and with a renewed sense of being fully held, fully guided, and fully loved. There is a heaviness inside you that even those closest to you have never fully understood, a weight that forms slowly, layer upon layer, until it felt as though you were holding your entire world together with nothing but sheer willpower. You've carried responsibilities that stretched you emotionally. You held pain that never had the space to be expressed. You've absorbed tension from situations you couldn't change. And through it all, you convinced yourself you had no choice but to keep going, to stay strong, to maintain control, to appear composed even when your inner strength was thinning. You don't realize how long you've been carrying this weight or how deeply it has shaped your posture, your breathing, your choices. But I've watched every moment of that strain, every quiet breakdown, every attempt to stay functional when your heart felt overwhelmed. And now, I am lifting that weight, gently, deliberately, in ways that won't confuse or frighten you, but will free you. This lifting won't always look dramatic on the surface. Sometimes it will appear as unexpected relief where stress once lived, or as clarity in places where confusion used to settle. At other times, it will feel like release, subtle shifts in your chest, small emotional openings, a sudden sense that the pressure is not as suffocating as before. These aren't random moments. They are evidence that the burden is being taken from your hands piece by piece. There are things you were never meant to carry alone, but life taught you otherwise. Experiences shaped the belief that you must manage everything yourself, that seeking help was weakness, that collapsing under pressure meant failure. Those beliefs have bound you long enough. I'm loosening their hold. Some of the weight you carried came from expectations others placed on you, or expectations you placed on yourself. Some came from unresolved hurts you learned to silence. Some came from the roles you felt obligated to fulfill even when they drained your spirit. And some came from fear, the fear of disappointing others, of being misunderstood, of losing relationships, of appearing incapable. These burdens became so familiar that you didn't realize how much they altered your rhythm, your rest, and your ability to feel peace. But I've seen the toll they've taken. I've seen how they exhausted your confidence and made you question your capacity. And now, the lifting begins, not by force, but by truth replacing lies, by peace settling where stress once lived, by boundaries forming where chaos once entered freely. As this weight lifts, you'll feel yourself breathing differently. You'll think more clearly. You'll sleep more peacefully. You'll make decisions with less fear. You'll feel a spaciousness within your soul that you haven't felt in years, perhaps ever. This isn't your strength returning. This is my strength taking the place of what overwhelmed you. You were never meant to carry life alone. And now, the burdens that once bent your spirit will lose their hold as I lift what you no longer need to bear. There are desires inside you that you've buried, not because you stopped wanting them, but because you began to believe they were too distant, too unrealistic, too unlikely for someone with your history. You told yourself to settle, to lower your expectations, to stop hoping for things that seemed too good or too meaningful. You didn't do this out of cynicism. You did it to protect your heart. Disappointment taught you to be cautious with your desires. Delays taught you to quiet your dreams. Silence taught you to temper your expectations. But those desires didn't disappear. They remained, quietly waiting beneath the surface, because they were planted there for a purpose. And now, I am preparing you for blessings that align with those very desires, blessings you once considered beyond your reach. Your preparation has not been punishment. It hath been shaping. Before certain blessings can enter your life, your inner world must be capable of holding them emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and relationally. You've grown in ways you don't give yourself credit for. You've learned discernment so you can choose wisely when opportunities arise. You've developed boundaries so you won't sabotage yourself by accepting less than what aligns with your worth. You've gained self-awareness that will prevent you from repeating past cycles. You've healed in ways that will allow you to experience goodness without fear, without disbelief, without feeling undeserving. Blessings require space, and your growth has been clearing that space inside you. You once believed certain blessings were meant for others, those who seemed more confident, more stable, more capable. You saw yourself as someone who would always have to work harder for less. But I see the layers of your heart, the strength you developed through hardship, the humility formed through pain, the compassion shaped through struggle. These are the very qualities that qualify you for the blessings that are coming. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. You're not forgotten. You're right on time, and the blessings you once felt distant from have been making their way toward you in the same quiet, steady way that your growth has been forming. These blessings won't overwhelm you or confuse you. They will fit your spirit. They will feel like alignment, not shock. They will feel like fulfillment, not fantasy. They will feel like stepping into something you were always meant for, because you were. And when they arrive, you will recognize that the waiting wasn't wasted time, it was preparation. You're being positioned to receive what once felt impossible. You're being shaped to hold what once felt unreachable. And soon, you will see that the blessings forming for you were never beyond your reach. They were simply waiting for you to become the person who could carry them fully. You've struggled with timing more than you admit. When things happened too slowly, you felt forgotten. When they happened too quickly, you felt unprepared. When they didn't happen at all, you questioned whether they ever would. Timing has been one of the greatest sources of tension in your heart, not because you lack patience, but because your life experiences taught you to be afraid of delay, afraid of pauses, afraid of seasons that don't match your expectations. You learn to associate waiting with disappointment, silence with abandonment, and slowness with failure. But now, I am teaching you to see timing differently, not as a threat to your hopes, but as a safeguard for them. The timing you once feared is the timing I am transforming into something trustworthy, purposeful, and deeply protective. You don't know what's unfolding behind the scenes, what connections are lying, what strengths are forming within you, what opportunities are being prepared, or what obstacles I'm clearing from your path. You only see the moment you're standing in. But I see the entire journey at once. I know what you're ready for and what you're not yet equipped to carry. I know what needs to shift inside you before certain doors open. I know what needs to mature in your environment before certain blessings arrive. Timing is not about withholding good things. It's about ensuring that when those things come, they don't crush you, overwhelm you, confuse you, or slip through your fingers. You'll begin to notice that timing becomes easier to trust as your heart becomes more aligned with peace rather than pressure. You won't feel the same urgency that once pushed you into worry. You won't fear being late or missing out. You won't panic when things take longer than expected. Instead, you'll feel a steady confidence rising within you, a knowing that what's meant for you will not be delayed beyond purpose. You'll realize that some things take time not because they are withheld, but because they are being built with care. As trust forms, you'll see how every season fit together with precision. You'll understand why certain doors didn't open earlier, why certain relationships didn't last, why certain opportunities paused until the right moment. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Timing has been the language of protection, not punishment. And now, As you step into what's coming, you'll carry a confidence anchored not in speed, but in certainty. Certainty that I know what I'm doing, certainty that your life is unfolding with intention, and certainty that the timing you once feared will prove to be a gift beyond what you imagine. There is a glow inside you that once burned brightly, so bright that it shaped your decisions, guided your passions, and drew you toward a version of yourself rooted in purpose and conviction. Over time, however, life placed too many demands on your heart, too many disappointments on your shoulders, too many losses in your memory, and too many unanswered questions in your spirit. Without even noticing, the light you once carried began to dim. You felt it weakening in seasons where you had to push through exhaustion just to function, and you sensed it fading in moments where hope felt like more of a burden than a gift. You reached a point where you questioned whether that light was still within you at all, or whether it had quietly extinguished while you were busy surviving. Yet I have never allowed it to go out. It has flickered, yes. It has struggled to breathe beneath the weight of everything you've endured. It has sat dormant during long stretches of emotional fog. But it never disappeared. And now, with intention and care, I am rekindling that light, breathing into it, feeding it, strengthening it, and allowing it to rise again in ways you could never force on your own. You'll notice this rekindling not in sudden bursts of inspiration, but in subtle shifts, small awakenings that appear almost unexpectedly. Moments where you feel a spark of excitement about something you had grown numb to. Ideas that once felt unattainable beginning to stir again. Longing returning in forms that no longer frighten you but instead feel purposeful. Strength rising where discouragement once lived. Clarity cutting through the fog you assumed would never lift. You'll feel warmth in places that were emotional winter for far too long. The rekindled light inside you isn't about returning to who you used to be. It's about stepping into who you've become. Someone wiser, deeper, steadier, and more grounded. Your light is growing stronger because you have learned to lean on truth rather than impulse, on discernment rather than fear, on authenticity rather than performance. This renewed light will not make life perfect, but it will make you radiant again from the inside out. It will draw you into alignment with purpose you thought you lost. It will bring back creativity, hope, courage, and vision in ways that feel natural instead of forced. It will guide your decisions, soften your doubts, and strengthen your confidence. And slowly, you will recognize yourself again, not the version shaped by survival, but the version shaped by renewal. What you assumed was gone was only resting. And now, that dormant light is rising again with a brilliance formed through resilience, healing, and transformation. There are emotional knots inside you that have formed over years, knots of confusion, fear, insecurity, disappointment, unmet needs, old wounds, expectations you tried to live up to, and memories that never fully healed. These knots have influenced your reactions, shaped your beliefs about yourself, and created tension you couldn't explain. You tried to push past them, tried to ignore them, tried to be strong enough to function despite them, but the knots only tightened with time. You felt them in moments of unexplained anxiety, in decisions that felt heavier than they should, in relationships where you couldn't fully relax, and in dreams that felt tangled in uncertainty. I have watched the strain these knots created, quiet inner battles you carried alone, emotional blockages that made you feel stuck, and tightness in your spirit that kept you from feeling fully free. And now, with patience and gentleness, I am loosening those knots one by one. This untangling is not happening all at once, because your heart deserves tenderness, not force. Some knots will unravel through healing conversations you avoided for years. Others will loosen through realizations that suddenly reframe old experiences. Some will dissolve through forgiveness, both of yourself and of others. and some will simply fade as new truth replaces the beliefs that once trapped you. Untangling doesn't always feel pleasant. Sometimes it brings old emotions to the surface. Sometimes it exposes wounds you forgot about. Sometimes it disrupts patterns you built your identity around. But every knot that loosens creates space for peace, space for clarity, space for connection, space for confidence, space for joy. You will begin to feel different without fully understanding why at first. You'll notice yourself responding to situations with more calm than fear. You'll experience a steadiness you didn't have before. You'll find room inside yourself to breathe emotionally, room to desire more for your life, room to be honest without shame, room to trust without tension. The heaviness you've grown accustomed to will begin lifting, revealing a softness in your heart you thought you had lost. And slowly, the knots that once defined your inner world will give way to freedom. This freedom won't just impact your emotions. It will influence your relationships, your decisions, your dreams, your boundaries, your self-worth. You're not being unraveled, you're being released. And what emerges from this process will be a heart more open, more whole, and more capable of receiving love, giving love, and walking in purpose without the strain that once held you back. There is a kind of peace that you've longed for, one that lasts longer than a moment, one that isn't shaken by circumstances, one that doesn't disappear the moment you face conflict or uncertainty. You've tasted glimpses of that peace before, but it always seemed fleeting, almost fragile, as if one wrong step or one unexpected hardship could shatter it. You craved a peace that was stable, steady, and unmovable, a peace that could anchor you in the midst of chaos instead of vanishing under its weight. And now, I am leading you into that very peace. Not a temporary calm, not a surface-level quiet, but a deep internal stillness that remains even when life shifts around you. This peace isn't dependent on everything going right. It is rooted in something stronger than circumstance. You'll notice this peace unfolding slowly, like a river that begins as a gentle stream. It will show itself first in moments where you would normally react from fear but instead feel clarity. It will settle into your thoughts in situations that used to overwhelm you. It will guide your decisions with confidence that doesn't rely on perfect outcomes. It will hold you steady when uncertainty tries to shake you. You will find that this peace doesn't silence emotion. It steadies it. It doesn't remove challenges. It strengthens you within them. It doesn't erase questions. It quiets the panic that once surrounded them. This peace grows as trust grows. It deepens as you release your grip on fears that used to dictate your choices. It strengthens as you stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios and start believing that you are supported even in the unknown. It matures as you allow yourself to rest instead of constantly bracing for impact. And soon, this peace will become the atmosphere within you, your steady place, your grounding place, your inner home. The peace I'm leading you into will not break under pressure. It will not evaporate when life tests you. It will not collapse when emotions fluctuate. This peace is built from truth, not wishful thinking. It is rooted in presence, not circumstance. It is held in the deepest part of you where fear cannot invade and doubt cannot dictate. As this peace settles into your life, you'll find yourself walking with a confidence that feels almost unfamiliar, because for the first time, you won't be ruled by the anxiety that once controlled you. You are being guided into a peace that will meet you in the morning and stay with you through the night. A peace that carries you, steadies you, anchors you, and restores you. A peace that will not break, because it is not built on you, it is built within you. There is a confidence within you that once stood strong, an inner certainty about who you were, what you carried, and what you were capable of. Yet life has a way of chipping away at that confidence through disappointment, betrayal, loss, comparison, and seasons where you felt like you were constantly failing despite giving everything you had. Over time, Those experiences created cracks you began to internalize. You stopped trusting your instincts. You second-guessed your decisions. You questioned your worth. You became cautious in areas where you once moved freely. You tried to act confident on the outside, but deep down you wondered if something essential had been damaged beyond repair. I've seen every fracture, every insecurity, every moment where you talked yourself out of stepping forward because fear spoke louder than truth. And now, I am rebuilding that confidence, not the version shaped by performance, but the version shaped by truth, identity, and inner strength that cannot be dismantled by circumstance. This rebuilding will not be a return to who you used to be. It will be the formation of someone wiser, steadier, and more aware. You will start to recognize the difference between confidence that depends on external validation and confidence that flows from a place of deep inner security. I am strengthening the parts of you that once felt fragile, not by inflating your ego, but by grounding your identity in clarity. You'll begin to see yourself through lenses that aren't clouded by past failures or the voices of those who didn't understand your worth. You'll feel the quiet rise of certainty in moments where doubt used to dominate. Situations that once left you feeling inadequate will no longer intimidate you with the same force. This confidence will grow from humility, authenticity, and truth, not from fear or comparison. You will feel differently inside your own skin as this process continues. You'll speak with more assurance. You'll make decisions without spiraling into worry. You'll trust your discernment without replaying every possibility. You'll walk into environments without shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Old lies about your worth will loosen their grip, replaced by truths that stabilize you. And with each moment of alignment, your confidence will rise, not loudly, but deeply. This rebuilt confidence will shape how you step into opportunities, how you form relationships, how you pursue purpose, and how you respond to adversity. It will not be easily shaken because it won't be built on unstable ground. It will be confidence refined through your journey, strengthened by resilience, anchored in identity, and grounded in truth. You are being rebuilt from within, and what emerges will be stronger than anything that tried to break you. There is a place inside you, quiet, wounded, almost hidden, where you stopped expecting good things to come your way. You didn't choose this shift consciously. It happened slowly, shaped by disappointments that felt too frequent, losses that came too suddenly, and hopes that were delayed long enough for discouragement to settle into your bones. Eventually, without noticing the transition, you lowered your expectations not because you lost desire, but because you couldn't bear the possibility of being let down again. You taught yourself to be realistic, to be cautious, to hold your heart at a distance from your own dreams. And while that posture protected you for a time, it also dulled your hope, dimmed your joy, and muted your anticipation. I have seen the tension in you between wanting to believe and trying to stay safe. I've watched you hold back even from the desires that align with who you are becoming. And now, I am healing that part of you, gently dismantling the fear that told you it was safer to expect nothing. This healing will reveal itself through a gradual shift in your perspective. You'll begin to notice a faint stir of excitement in places that once felt numb. You'll feel genuine anticipation for things you once prepared your heart to live without. You'll catch yourself imagining positive outcomes rather than bracing for negative ones. You'll notice hope resurfacing in areas you assumed were permanently closed off. This return of expectancy is not naive optimism. It is restored trust. It is your heart remembering that good things are possible, that joy is not a trap, that hope is not a setup for disappointment, and that desire is not something to be ashamed of. You'll also see my healing through the opportunities I begin to place in your path, opportunities that feel like alignment rather than coincidence. connections that bring life instead of confusion. Moments that remind you that goodness still finds its way to you. I'm not healing your expectation so that you can cling to fantasy. I'm healing it so you can walk with courage into the good things being prepared for you. The part of you that shut down didn't do so because you were weak. It did so because you were wounded. And now, those wounds are being treated with tenderness and truth. Soon, you'll reclaim your ability to expect good things, not with fear disguised as caution, but with confidence rooted in renewal. You will dream again, hope again, and anticipate again, not because life becomes perfect, but because your heart becomes whole. There are moments where your inner world feels like a storm, thoughts swirling, emotions colliding, memories resurfacing without warning, and uncertainty stretching themselves into every corner of your mind. You've tried to anchor yourself with logic, with routine, with distraction, with determination, but the chaos persisted in ways you couldn't always control. Some of this chaos came from unresolved experiences, some from burdens you were never meant to carry, some from fears that spoke louder than truth, and some from environments that demanded more from you than your spirit could sustain. You've carried this internal turbulence quietly, appearing composed while your mind raced and your heart tightened beneath the weight of everything left unprocessed. I have watched this struggle with compassion, not disappointment. And now, I am bringing order to the very places where chaos once ruled. This order won't come by force. It will come by alignment, thoughts finding clarity, emotions finding balance, desires finding direction, and pressures releasing their hold. You'll begin to notice that your mind feels less crowded. Questions that once overwhelmed you will start to settle. Decisions that once triggered panic will begin to feel manageable. The emotional noise inside you will quiet, not because you suppress it, but because healing makes room for stillness. I am not asking you to control the chaos. I'm calming it from the inside out. This order will arrive through truths that replace lies, through peace that interrupts anxiety, through boundaries that protect your energy, and through revelations that dissolve confusion. You'll sense a kind of inner sorting happening, restructuring of what matters, what doesn't, what needs release, and what deserves attention. The clutter within you will begin to clear, giving way to a calm that isn't superficial but deeply rooted. As this inner order strengthens, you'll find yourself responding to situations differently. You will feel less overwhelmed by minor frustrations. You'll think more clearly in moments that once triggered emotional spirals. You'll experience stability even when external circumstances feel uncertain. You'll feel grounded, centered, anchored, qualities that once felt out of reach during your internal storms. This is not just emotional organization. It is spiritual renewal. It is your heart reclaiming space that chaos once occupied. It is your mind learning how to function from peace rather than fear. It is your spirit rising above patterns that once held it in confusion. You are not losing yourself. You are being reordered, realigned, and restored. And the clarity emerging within you will shape the next season of your life with strength that cannot be shaken. There have been long stretches of your journey where everything around you felt hazy. Your identity, your desires, your direction, even your sense of belonging. It became difficult to recognize where your true self ended and where others' expectations began. You adjusted, adapted, and survived, but in the process, something inside you became blurred. You started questioning who you really were beneath the roles you played, beneath the responsibilities you carried, beneath the emotions you hid to keep peace around you. You felt the fog settle slowly, like a subtle dimming of your inner clarity, until it became normal to feel uncertain about yourself. What you did notice is that this fog didn't come from failure. It came from the weight of everything you tried to carry at once. And now, I am clearing that fog, gently and intentionally, so the real you can come back into focus. This clarity will unfold in quiet revelations. You'll start recognizing patterns that never belonged to you but clung to you through habit or survival. You'll see the difference between what your heart genuinely desires and what fear or pressure pushed you toward. As the fog lifts, you'll notice a deeper honesty rising within you, an honesty that isn't harsh but freeing. You'll feel drawn toward choices that align with your truth instead of choices driven by obligation. You'll begin to rediscover the confidence, creativity, curiosity, and tenderness that were never lost, just hidden beneath layers of emotional noise. This clarity will show you not only who you are but who you are becoming. As you see yourself clearly again, you'll also begin to see your surroundings with new eyes. Relationships will reveal their true impact on you. Opportunities will show their real potential or their real cost. Fears will appear smaller than they once seemed. Dreams that felt unrealistic will begin making sense again. And the parts of you that once felt confusing will align with a sense of purpose you can feel but not fully describe. This clarity isn't about fixing yourself. It's about finding yourself beneath the dust of everything you endured. When the fog clears, you will feel less pressured by comparison, less defined by past mistakes, and less overwhelmed by uncertainty. You will walk differently, more confidently, more intentionally, more authentically. You will think more clearly, choose more wisely, and trust more deeply. The fog served a purpose for a time, but it will not define your future. You are stepping into a season where you will know yourself again, truly, deeply, and beautifully. There is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, one that lives quietly in your endurance, your compassion, your ability to care, your resilience, your willingness to try again even when tired. You carried that strength for a long time without realizing how much it cost you. You held families together, relationships together, responsibilities together, dreams together, pieces of yourself together. And though you rarely acknowledged it, that constant upholding gradually drained your inner reserves. You thought you were simply tired, or maybe getting older, or maybe losing motivation. But beneath those surface explanations, the truth was simpler. Your strength was being poured out faster than it was being replenished. I watched this decline, not as criticism, but with deep compassion, because even you didn't notice how much of yourself you were giving away. And now, I am restoring that strength, fully, gently, and in ways that touch every part of your being. This restoration won't feel like a sudden surge of energy. It will feel like your capacity slowly expanding, your emotional stamina returning, your clarity resurfacing, and your ability to function without feeling overwhelmed beginning to reawaken. Strength will return first in your thoughts, the ability to focus, to stay grounded, to process without spiraling. Then it will return to your emotions, giving you room to feel without becoming consumed. And finally, it will return to your spirit, the place where hope lives, where courage grows, where resilience rebuilds. This is not just physical strength or mental endurance. It is the deep, inner strength that life tried to erode. You'll begin to notice that things which recently exhausted you no longer drain you in the same way. Responsibilities you dreaded will begin to feel manageable. Conversations that once intimidated you will feel less heavy. You'll experience a renewed capacity to love, to create, to hope, to show up, not because you're forcing yourself, but because the strength is genuinely returning. You'll feel more present in your own life, more connected to your purpose, more anchored in your decisions. This restored strength will bring freedom. It will free you from patterns of overextension. It will free you from cycles of exhaustion. It will free you from the belief that you must always be the strong one. You are stepping into a season where your strength will no longer be drained faster than it can be replenished. Instead, it will grow, settle, and endure. And as it does, you will rediscover a version of yourself you haven't felt in a long time, a version grounded, energized, and ready for what comes next. There are areas of your life where you made peace with less, not because you lacked desire, but because the battles you fought made you tired. You told yourself to accept the bare minimum in relationships, careers, dreams, emotional well-being, and even spiritual growth. You stopped reaching for more because reaching required energy you no longer had. Settling felt safer than risking disappointment. It felt stable compared to the vulnerability of hope. You convinced yourself that good enough was enough, even though your soul quietly longed for something deeper, truer, richer. But I know the fullness of who you are and the depth of what you carry, and I cannot allow you to remain in places that diminish you. So now, I am calling you out, not harshly, not abruptly, but firmly and lovingly, from the places where you settled. This calling will begin as a restlessness, an inner stirring that makes old comforts feel too tight, familiar routines feel uninspiring, and once acceptable dynamics feel misaligned. You will sense a subtle discontent that isn't born from ingratitude, but from growth. What once fit you emotionally, spiritually, or relationally will begin to feel too small. You'll feel pulled towards something more, even if you don't yet know what that more is. This is not frustration, it is awakening. Settling numbed you, but awakening will revive you. As this calling grows stronger, you will gain clarity about what no longer serves your well-being. You'll outgrow mindsets that once controlled you. You'll release relationships that required you to shrink yourself. You'll step away from environments that dampen your spirit. You'll re-examine dreams you once abandoned. You'll notice a rising courage, a sense that you're capable of more than you once believed. This courage won't come from pressure, it will come from alignment. You are being led into spaces where your heart can breathe again, where your creativity can flourish, where your voice can be heard, where your purpose can expand. The places where you settled were a temporary home during a weary season, but they were never your destiny. You are being guided into a future that matches the size of your calling, not the size of your fear. And as you step out of the small spaces that once felt safe, you will discover the fullness, freedom, and possibility that were waiting for you all along. There is a fire within you that once burned with intensity, visions that inspired you, callings that stirred your soul, dreams that felt so alive they carried you through even the hardest days. But over the years, life layered itself on top of that fire. Responsibilities weighed you down. Disappointments dulled your enthusiasm. Practicality pushed you to the side of your own dreams. And slowly, almost quietly, you convinced yourself that maybe you had outgrown those passions, or that they were meant only for a younger, more hopeful version of you. Yet passion does not die when life becomes heavy. It simply goes dormant, waiting for the right moment to rise again. What you thought you outgrew was never meant to fade. It was meant to mature. And now, I am awakening that passion, bringing it back with depth, clarity, and purpose that the earlier version of you could not have carried. You will begin to feel this awakening in the form of curiosity, new ideas appearing unexpectedly, old dreams resurfacing, forgotten interests drawing your attention again. It won't feel like pressure. It will feel like invitation. You'll notice certain conversations stirring something inside you. You'll feel energy returning in areas where you once felt indifferent. You'll sense a pull toward things you once loved but abandoned because life demanded more immediate responsibilities. This awakening will not rush you. It will unfold gently, reminding you that your passion was never childish, unrealistic, or misplaced. It was planted in you for a reason. As your passion reawakens, pieces of your identity will reconnect in ways that bring life back into your spirit. You'll remember who you were before fear reshaped you. You'll rediscover the voice you quieted to fit into expectations that were too small for your calling. You'll regain the courage to dream without apologizing. This renewed passion will not feel naive. It will feel wise, grounded, and aligned with everything you've learned. It will give you direction rather than distract you. It will energize you rather than overwhelm you. It will build you rather than drain you. You may feel hesitant at first, unsure whether to trust this stirring. You'll wonder if it's too late, or if you missed your moment, or if you have the capacity to pursue anything beyond what your current life demands. But passion that returns after being buried for years carries more strength, more clarity, and more resilience than it did before. You are not returning to who you used to be. You are stepping into the fullness of who you were meant to become. This awakening is not about revisiting old dreams. It's about fulfilling them with a maturity that ensures they won't slip through your fingers. You have not outgrown your passion. You are finally growing into it. And soon, you will feel the rush of purpose move through you again, not as a distant hope, but as a living fire guiding your next steps. There is a story you've been telling yourself for years, one shaped by what you've experienced, what others have said about you, what you believed about your own worth, and the conclusions you drew during some of the hardest moments of your life. This narrative has influenced how you see yourself, how you make decisions, how you form relationships, and how you interpret your failures and successes. It has dictated what you believe you deserve and what you think you are capable of. But the story you've carried was built during seasons of survival, not seasons of clarity. It reflected your wounds more than your truth. And now, I am rewriting that narrative, not by erasing your past, but by reframing it through a lens of purpose, healing, and identity. You've told yourself that certain failures defined you, but they were turning points, not verdicts. You told yourself you were too broken, but the cracks in your story are becoming the very places where light enters. You convinced yourself you aren't enough, but you never saw yourself through my eyes, stronger, wiser, and more capable than you imagined. You believed your worth depended on what you produced, but your worth has always been inherent. The old narrative treated your pain as proof of inadequacy. The new narrative reveals your pain as the soil where your resilience was formed. As this writing unfolds, you'll notice your self-perception shifting. You'll stop labeling yourself by your worst seasons. You'll stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You'll stop believing lies about your worth that were spoken out of someone else's brokenness, not truth. You'll begin to see patterns more clearly, not to blame yourself, but to free yourself. Decisions that once felt impossible will feel achievable because you'll stop approaching them as the wounded version of yourself and begin approaching them as the healed version emerging within you. This shift will also impact how you handle relationships. You will no longer cling to connections rooted in fear of abandonment. You will no longer tolerate being undervalued. You will no longer mold yourself to fit roles that suffocate your spirit. You will step into dynamics where your heart can breathe, where your purpose can grow, and where your worth is honored. The old narrative kept you small. The new one will give you space to expand. Your story is not ending where pain tried to stop you. It is being rewritten, reshaped, and redeemed in ways that will transform how you walk into the rest of your life. Soon, you will think differently, choose differently, love differently, and live differently, because the story you're carrying will no longer be one of limitation, but of possibility. There are relationships in your life that once fit you perfectly, friendships, partnerships, circles of influence, familiar patterns of relating to others. They aligned with who you were at the time, the level of healing you had reached, and the understanding you had of your own worth. But as you've grown, expanded, healed, and matured, those connections have started to feel misaligned, not because something is wrong with you or with them, but because growth naturally changes the kind of relationships your soul can sustain. You've tried to hold on, tried to shrink your needs, tried to dim your light, tried to maintain comfort for the sake of familiarity, but something deeper keeps telling you that you're outgrowing the places where your heart once lived. And now, I am preparing you for connections that match your growth, not who you were but who you are becoming. This preparation may begin with subtle discomfort. You'll feel your spirit withdrawing from relationships where you've been undervalued or misunderstood. You'll notice conversations that once felt fulfilling now leave you empty. You'll realize that some connections require emotional labor you can no longer afford to give. This isn't bitterness, it's awareness. Growth sharpens your discernment, and discernment reveals truth. You're not breaking relationships, you're outgrowing limitations. As you expand, you'll feel a longing for deeper connection, relationships that meet you with mutual respect, emotional maturity, authenticity, and shared purpose. You'll crave alignment instead of convenience, honesty instead of performance, depth instead of familiarity. And I am preparing exactly those kinds of connections for you, people whose presence strengthens you, whose words support you, whose hearts align with your values, whose journeys complement your own. These won't be relationships that drain you, they will be relationships that nourish you. This shift will also transform how you show up for others. You'll love with clearer boundaries. You'll communicate with greater honesty. You'll give without losing yourself. You'll honor your needs without guilt. You'll stop bending to fit into spaces that require you to be small. And because you're showing up differently, the connections entering your life will reflect this healthier, stronger version of you. You are stepping into a season where relationships will feel purposeful rather than obligatory, uplifting rather than draining, reciprocal rather than one-sided. The connections being prepared for you will honor who you are now, not who you had to be in order to survive past seasons. And when these new relationships arrive, you will recognize them not by how impressive they appear, but by how safe, alive, and fully yourself you feel in their presence. There is a subtle trembling inside you that you've mistaken for weakness. But what you're feeling is actually the stirring of courage that buried itself under years of strain. You weren't aware of how much emotional armor you had to wear just to survive certain seasons. Armor that protected you when you needed it but also numbed your boldness over time. You once moved through life with a sense of inner bravery, but circumstances, criticism, failure, and fear slowly convinced you to quiet that courage. You learned to choose safety over risk, familiarity over growth, and predictability over possibility. It wasn't because you lacked strength, it was because you carried too much weight alone for too long. But now, in this moment of your journey, I am awakening courage within you, not the kind that roars, but the kind that stands on steady legs even when your heart beats fast. This courage will not feel like a sudden burst of confidence. It will feel like something rising slowly from your core, an internal shift that says, I can try again, even when part of you still trembles. You'll start to feel this awakening in small ways. You'll notice yourself speaking up where you once stayed silent. You'll make decisions with less hesitation. You'll choose honesty over avoidance. You'll consider dreams you once buried because they felt too heavy to hold. You'll feel a tug to step beyond the edges of your comfort zone, not recklessly, but boldly. This courage won't push you. It will invite you, gently but firmly, into places that require growth. And every time you lean into that invitation, your courage will strengthen. The areas you once feared will no longer intimidate you the same way. Situations that paralyze you in the past will feel more manageable. And even when worry tries to cling to your thoughts, you will sense a deeper voice inside you rising to guide you through the uncertainty. This voice won't shame you for your fear, it will steady you through it. You will discover that courage doesn't eliminate fear, it teaches you how to walk forward while feeling it. This awakened courage will shape your relationships, your goals, your boundaries, and your identity. It will give you permission to stop shrinking. It will allow you to pursue things you once thought were beyond your reach. It will help you step into roles you once felt unqualified for. And most importantly, it will remind you that you were never meant to live a life defined by fear, hesitation, or self-doubt. Your courage isn't returning, it's emerging in a stronger, wiser form. And as it awakens, you will rise with it. There have been times when you strained to sense me, moments where you whispered prayers into the quiet and wondered if they reached anywhere beyond your own thoughts. In those seasons, you assumed my silence meant distance. You assumed my stillness meant absence. You assumed your emotional numbness meant spiritual disconnection. But what you didn't realize is that my nearness was never dependent on what you felt. It was woven into the atmosphere around you, anchoring your life even when you couldn't detect it. And now, I am guiding you into a deeper awareness of that nearness, one that does not rest on emotion or drama, but on truth, stability, and quiet intimacy. This awareness will unfold in subtle but profound ways. You'll begin noticing moments of peace settling into your heart at times when anxiety should have dominated. You'll feel clarity arriving in decisions where confusion once clouded your mind. You'll sense comfort in moments where you would normally feel alone. You'll recognize my presence in the timing of unexpected help, in the encouragement that arrives when needed, in the gentle nudges that guide your steps, in the wisdom that rises within you when you least expect it. These are not coincidences. They are touches of my nearness that your spirit is now becoming sensitive enough to perceive. This deeper awareness will also shift the way you pray, the way you hope, and the way you interpret silence. You will begin to understand that silence often means I am working beneath the surface, not withholding from you. You will realize that stillness is sometimes the clearest environment for my guidance. You will start to trust that my presence remains constant even when your emotions fluctuate. This awareness will bring stability into your inner life, a foundation that no circumstance, no fear, no disappointment can shake. You will find that I am present in the ordinary as much as in the extraordinary. In your breaths, your decisions, your rest, your routines. In laughter, in tears, in hope, in uncertainty. My nearness will feel less like something you're striving to achieve and more like something you're relaxing into. Because I have always been here, you will walk with a renewed confidence, knowing that you are not moving through life alone. And this awareness will change the way you see everything. There is a part of you, quiet, weary, often hidden, that has whispered more times than you admit, I don't know how much longer I can do this. You've carried responsibilities that stretched you thin. You endured emotional battles that few people even know about. You survived seasons where giving up felt easier than holding on. And though you kept going, part of you had been running on empty for far too long. I have seen the weight behind your sighs, the heaviness behind your resilience, the exhaustion behind your strong exterior. And I am strengthening that part of you, not the polished, put-together part others see, but the fragile, tired, overwhelmed part you guard so carefully. This strength will not come as pressure. It will not force you to pretend you are okay. It will feel like relief, like a steadying hand placed on your back, holding you upright when your own legs feel unsteady. You will begin to feel a new resilience forming, not the frantic kind that comes from survival, but the grounded kind that comes from support. You will find yourself able to handle situations that once drained you. You'll feel emotional endurance growing where there was once only exhaustion. You'll experience a deeper ability to recover from setbacks, disappointments, and unexpected challenges. This strength will carry you where your own resources once failed. You might not recognize this strength at first because it won't feel like sudden energy. It will feel like steadiness. The mental spirals that once overwhelmed you will begin to slow down. The emotional weight that once felt unbearable will feel lighter. You will find yourself breathing more easily, responding more calmly, and thinking more clearly. And when discouragement tries to whisper again, you'll notice that it holds less influence over you. This strengthening is not about turning you into someone who never struggles. It is about making you someone who no longer collapses under the weight of struggle. It is the rebuilding of your inner foundation, the part of you that once felt cracked and fragile. With this strength, you will endure, grow, rise, and thrive. What once felt like the end will become the turning point. The part of you that wanted to give up is becoming the part of you that learns to rise again. And this time, you will not rise alone. There are parts of your heart that have been living in fragments, pieces scattered by heartbreak, disappointment, disillusionment, betrayal, and the slow erosion of hope over time. You didn't choose to become fragmented. It happened as you navigated seasons where you gave more than you received, trusted more than you were supported, and loved more deeply than others knew how to hold. Over time, your heart learned to shrink itself just to survive. You became selective with your emotions, cautious with your vulnerability, guarded with your desires. You lived from pieces because living from your whole heart felt too risky, too exposed, too vulnerable. But you were never meant to live in fragments. You were created to live in fullness. And now, I am calling your heart back into that fullness. This calling will unfold like a gentle gathering of the pieces of your soul. You will begin to notice healing in areas where pain once lingered. You will feel warmth returning to places that felt cold for years. You will sense desire flowing back into dreams you abandoned. You'll feel openness where you once closed yourself off. The parts of you that hid will begin to emerge with quiet confidence. And instead of feeling overwhelmed by vulnerability, you will feel strengthened by it. As your heart returns to fullness, your capacity to love will deepen, not naively, but wisely. Your ability to hope will sharpen, not recklessly, but courageously. Your discernment will grow clearer. Your emotional balance will steady, and the heaviness that once clouded your spirit will begin to lift. Fullness doesn't mean you won't feel pain again. It means pain will no longer define your identity. It will no longer shrink your life. It will no longer determine your choices. You will begin to live from an expanded heart, one capable of joy, peace, purpose, passion, and connection without fear controlling every step. This fullness will guide your decisions, restore your confidence, renew your relationships, and shape your future. It will remind you that your heart was never too fragile. It was simply waiting to be restored. You are not returning to who you were before heartbreak. You are becoming someone stronger than heartbreak. And as your heart rises back into fullness, you will feel more alive, more aligned, and more connected than you have in a very long time. Amen.